Book 4, Archaea Rising, Chapter 33, April 2014, Archaea Rising. Armies on the move, soldiers of Archaea moving from the north, their weapon rising, a silent reaper from depths below, breaking open oceans, releasing their weapon of mass destruction, returning their world to reign for 1 billion years. Wake up, you're mumbling in your sleep, Ingrid said, as she nudged LP's shoulder to wake him up. I'm not asleep. I'm just having one of those moments when I start predicting the future, and what I see I don't want to talk about right now. Well, leave me in the dark as usual, but I warn you, snap out of these negative thoughts or it'll send you crazy, Ingrid said, while turning to him and giving a reassuring hug. Feeling her warm body against him, he started to relax and let go of those thoughts that dogged his mind. Sunrise was approaching as first light filtered through the bedroom window. It was time to get up, like every other morning, to capture the perfect sunrise. Okay, are you coming? Sunrise in 10 minutes. Let's be quick about it, whispered LP. You can't take your time about anything. Go, and we'll talk later. LP quickly changed into his board shorts, put on his runners, grabbed a warm flannel, and sprinted out the front door, clutching his camera case in one hand, and in the other, his iPhone and car keys for his Holden Cruise. Ice on the rear window and cold wind pushing against his face was a taste of what to expect when he arrives at one of the beaches of Caloundra. His car was not completely covered from the cold morning air in the carport. He kept a bucket of water just opposite the car for moments like this. He picked up the green bucket and tossed its contents over the trouble spot with a mighty splash, but it wasn't enough to remove all ice. It just needed a quick wipe and a bit of scraping to remove any trouble spots for seeing in reverse. Now LP was ready to back out from his driveway, camera ready on the passenger seat and iPhone on speaker as he turned the ignition on. Changing colours of sunrise always got him excited as he rushed to one of his favourite beach locations to capture the moment. It would take 3 minutes to get there. Enough time to go over in his mind what he was going to say to Ingrid over breakfast and explain what Archaea is, was, or whatever, and not frighten the living daylights out of her. Caution may be the better tack, and explain it away as dreaming. The last thing she'd want here is a lecture of biblical proportion, connecting the creation story of God removing Adam's rib to create woman. Then compare it to bacteria and Archaea becoming one billions of years ago, being the source of all multi-celled life forms on Earth over time. You may well call them the creator, but at the same time, the opposite could be true. The question Ingrid may well ask, where did they come from in the first place? His answer won't please her. From space. Hitchhikers of the galaxy that can remain dormant for hundreds of thousands of years in the most extreme conditions, including meteorites. That may well be the real creation story. They harbour no disease, no pathogen, nor virus. LP stopped his car at Dicky Beach car park with a few minutes to spare before sunrise. He quickly walked down to the foreshore, feeling the wet sand sink between his toes. Early morning, weather permitting, not only revealed the changing colours of sunrise. This morning reflected a golden glow reflection before his feet, stretching back across the ocean. After his photo shoot, he found it the best way to kick off any day, with a morning walk along the beach to boot. Not everyone can do it. But when you have the opportunity, one should take advantage of it, with a camera or iPhone, capturing the moment forever, and share it. 10 minutes after sunrise, LP was back driving home, but not before going to the top of Queen Street, looking inland to see what the Glasshouse Mountains looked like, clear blue sky, mist or overcast. He would decide if it's worth taking the 20-minute drive to his other favourite spot for snapping photos, walking the mountain trails and climbing the not-so-hard mountain peaks. Storm clouds on the distant horizon engulfed the peaks, so he proceeded to drive home along Sugarbag Road and back up his driveway within 2 minutes. Parking his vehicle in the carport, LP then went straight inside with his phone and camera in hand. Ingrid called out to him, "Bacon and eggs are almost ready. Are you using Photoshop or eating now? Just give me a sec. I'll upload the pics I want to edit and post on Twitter for later." LP walked from his laptop that dominated the kitchen table, strewn with scribbled notes on 4 sheets of white paper. A second glancing eye would see typed pages of his latest novel spread out in chaotic order. It looked like you'd need to be a mind reader to figure out what he was doing. If Ingrid had her way, she would wipe her hand across the table and bin the lot of it. However, that was not going to happen, while LP could get his way, by pointing out there's a perfectly good table on the veranda for eating off. And he would say when Ingrid complained about wanting her kitchen table back, "When you stop using the outdoor table for planting miniature cactus, I'll stop using the kitchen table as an office." Stalemate. Nothing would change. They're both too pig-headed to comprise. "Come on, I'll make room on the outdoor table, but you better get the bacon and eggs off the barbie before it goes cold." "I've turned it off," said Ingrid. LP placed breakfast in front of Ingrid, and he sat down with his food and said, "I'm one step ahead of you. Eat it while it's hot." And I'll tell what I was on about earlier this morning. In between scoffing down mouthfuls of food, LP started to explain. "Well, I'm not going into it too much, but Archaea is a single-cell organism that joined together with bacteria forming multi-cell organisms. Archaea that remained single-celled went about transforming an inhospitable world that looked like Venus today, along with cane bacteria, into something habitable for multi-celled life forms like us. Archaea can still be found in the most extreme conditions on Earth, in hot springs, sulfur plumes, permafrost, and active volcanoes above and below the ocean. And up until 1978, these single-celled organisms were unknown to scientists. Only after 1990 were they recognised as a separate kingdom, classified like plants, animals, and fungi." "Hang on, what's the problem with that? That's in the past?" Ingrid said with a distorted look on her face. "That's right, 3.5 billion years ago, and they're on the march to take back their world," replied LP. "How can that be relevant now?" "Get your mind off this rubbish," Ingrid said with a dismissive tone in her voice. LP replied, "Just 2 words, global warming. Are you still on about that?" "Yep, and you've got your head in the sand. You should read more." "Stuff you, and take your food with you," she screamed. LP stood up from the table, pushing his chair back with such force it bounced over the balcony rail. He didn't speak, just scoffed down a last mouthful of bacon and figured he should keep his mouth shut. Ingrid put her head down and continued eating. She was not happy. LP walked inside, sitting down in front of his laptop with Photoshop open. To take his mind off what just happened, he started editing his sunrise shots for posting on Twitter. When Ingrid was in a better mood, he would try to expand on the subject about microorganisms and why they could end the world we know. After uploading his best sunrise photo on Twitter for his followers, he figured it was time to give his old mates a phone call and fill them in about Archaea as well. His plan to climb Mount Biwa. Maybe they'll be more receptive to what he's got to say. Biwa first in his contact list. A quick touch on his iPhone and he answered, "How's it going? When are you coming down to Sydney next? We'll get on the piss and do some gambling." "I'm not ringing about doing that. What do you know about Archaea?" "Can you bet on it?" asked Bear. "Possibly your life. If the powers to be get it wrong," LP snapped back. "You're paranoid. What do you want about this time? I thought this all ended after you left New York." "You delivered the scroll and it was uploaded as foretold back on New Year's Eve. It's over. There's nothing more any of us can do. It changed nothing. It's still a violent world with crazy weather all over the place. My concern is not for myself. It's our kids and grandkids to have a better future, or should I say, a future. We need to meet." Bear was starting to get curious. "Why? Tell me now. What else do you know?" "No, let's meet at your old beach house, and I'll fill you in while we need to return to the mountain as well. I'll reveal what I know, and only then. I'll let you know when, after I speak to Brownie, Cato, and Mason." "They're not going to climb the mountain. Certainly not Brownie. He thinks it's his Dreamtime ancestor," Bear said in a raised voice. "We'll see. I'll phone you again after speaking to everyone," LP replied. Next, LP would do the ring around, contacting the old gang and explain what's on his mind. He would say Bear will be coming up from Sydney as well to climb Mount Biwa. Assuming that Bear was on board, LP was sure they would all agree to meet at their old haunt. LP only had to lock in the time and date. LP looked at the front door as a loud bang demanded attention. Before he could get up from in front of his laptop, Mitchy, his youngest son, strode in carrying his toolbox, looking like he was in a hurry to be somewhere else. "What's the panic?" asked LP. "I'm packing my bags, loading up the vehicle, and I'm out of here." "Out of here to where?" LP asked, with a surprised look and a stare. "Port Hedland in Western Australia. That's where big money can be made over in the Pilbara region." Mitchy replied with confidence. "Who's going with you?" LP asked. "No one. One of my mates is already over there earning the big bucks, so the sooner I get there, the better." "Hang on, have you got a job lined up?" "Nope." "So you're going to drive 5,000 clicks across Australia and hope you'll get work. Are you sure that's a good idea?" "You're too conservative, old man. Where's the old risk taker, the visionary, the adventurer?" Mitchy said while shaking his head. "I've still got it, so I'll be your navigator. I'm coming too," LP replied. There was silence for a few seconds as those words sunk in, and then Mitchy laughed with a surprised look on his face. "Okay, be ready in 5 days. We're crossing Australia in 6 days from east to west, down to South Australia, up to Uluru, onto Alice Springs, and up to Katherine, then across the top end to Broome. And if I've timed it right, then it's only another 6-hour drive south and we'll hit Port Hedland. I'll find my old road maps and check out if you're on the money or your calculations are out. Where we're travelling, we won't get much of a GPS signal, so I'd rather rely on my old paper map of Australia." Mitchy was okay with that, and walked away heading for his bedroom to start looking at packing, while LP went out to his vehicle, opened the glove box, and grabbed out a folded map. He went back inside, and on the kitchen bench, opened the map to mark the route and check if his son's calculations were correct. Ingrid shouted from the balcony, "Who are you talking to?" "Mitchy, he's leaving home and I'm going too," replied LP. "Talk sense. What's going on?" "I just told you. And when you're in a good mood, I'll explain what's happening. And when you come inside, I'll show you the map." You could see on Ingrid's face she was still grumpy as she folded her arms and gave LP a stare that could kill from where she was sitting on the balcony. LP thought, it's time to be tactful. Walk away and not talk about what he was on about earlier at breakfast. Nor try to explain why he was leaving in 5 days to cross Australia without her. Just not good timing. Chapter 34. Across Oz. Friday on his mind came around fast enough for LP, going over everything they'd need for their road trip to the Red Centre and across the top end. LP's son insisted that they check out Uluru, previously known as Ayers Rock, 4 hours south of Alice Springs in the heart of Australia. This wouldn't be the quickest way to take to get to Port Hedland in 6 days. "Okay, old man, are you sure you got everything packed back there? You know I would have helped, but I've been working all week," Mitchy said as he walked behind his vehicle, checking everything was secure before closing the canopy windows of his Holden 4-wheel drive Rodeo Trayback. "Take care of our son and get him there safely, or don't bother coming back," said Ingrid. You could tell in her voice she was still pissed off with LP's attitude earlier in the week, because he still hadn't explained what he was on about regarding Archaea, or talked much about the trip across to the west coast. "See you in a week, love, and I'll phone to let you know how we're travelling when we've got reception," LP replied. Ingrid walked to the driver's side door and gave her son a big kiss on his cheek and said, "Stay safe and ring me before you listen to your father's advice." LP laughed off that last comment as Mitchy pushed the gear stick into first gear as LP started to rattle off a checklist: 2 food bins, 2 5-litre containers of water, fishing rods, carton of beer, bedding, tarp, poles, ropes, table, gas, stove, camping chairs, phones, wallets, jack, fuel drum, tools, box, and the cooler with cold food from the fridge, with a few chilled beers on top. "Did you fill up the jerrycan?" Mitchy asked. "No, it's half full. We'll fill it when we fill up next, and if we've forgotten anything, there's no turning back," replied LP. Mitchy drove out of the driveway and gave a wave to his mother, and LP stretched out his hand and gave a thumbs up as they left home. Heading west, they would travel past the Glasshouse Mountains, LP's second home when it comes spiritual enlightenment. 2.5 hours into their journey, they drove across a railway line, stopping directly opposite the rail crossing at a pub on the outskirts of Dalby. There, they would down a cold beer before changing drivers. The Bun, the nickname for this pub, had the longest town name in Queensland. By the time they tried to pronounce it, the publican would have 2 beers poured. Kill and Bun pub was your typical hotel design, from when cob and coaches and men on horseback would stop for accommodation, a cold beer and food. The 2-story building had surrounding balconies, with overnight rooms upstairs for travellers and the public bar downstairs. LP and his son walked into the public bar and asked for 2 schooners of cold beer on tap. They sat at the bar and chatted about where to stop overnight. It wouldn't be upstairs. They were travelling on the cheap, and tonight would be under the stars further west, and there was still enough light for another couple of hours of driving before sunset. They took their time knocking down their cold ales, but Mitchy wanted more beer, a carton of Corona to be to his liking, but not there. Grog would be cheaper in Dolby. They finished their beers and said thanks to the publican and walked out the way they came in, through the front door and 2 steps down to their vehicle parked out front. Mitchy was up for more driving. He wasn't tired and drove off to find a bottle shop in Dolby. After angle parking in front of Liquorland, he then went in to buy a carton of Coronas. Mitchy got back behind the wheel, still keen on driving, and let old man be a tourist for now. They headed west, with a fair amount of traffic coming their way from workers ending their shift, most likely from the hundreds of coal seam gas wells that had been drilled throughout the district. It was now dark on the outskirts of St. George, as they looked for a spot to pull off the highway and set up camp. LP pointed to a cutting in the bush, and Mitchy left the bitumen, driving 20 metres into an open clearing of scrub. It was 8 o'clock, and they weren't going to bother setting up the tarp over the rear of the vehicle. Just removed the table, gas stove, camping chairs, and cooler, making enough room for 2 to sleep in the back on a foam mattress under the fiberglass canopy. But a problem presented itself. They had to find a hunk of wood to prop up the tailgate because the tray back was short for the mattress. They needed to prop it to allow for the mattress to fit. If not, their feet would be overhanging by a foot. Mitchy spotted a solid tree branch not far from the vehicle, walked over and cleaned it up with LP's axe and positioned it under the tailgate as support. Mitchy dropped the axe next to the cooler, then pulled out a cold Corona and asked, "What are you having?" "I'll have one too." "Grab a couple of stubby coolers from the console while you're at it," LP said. They didn't bother with cooking a meal because they got KFC on the way through town. Sitting and relaxing beneath a cloudless night sky, stars shone bright. Bush abounded with red dirt underfoot as they melted into their surroundings. This was just a taste of what's to come. This is the real Australia. Not the city lights and hustle and bustle, but highways with little traffic that stretch in a straight line for hundreds of kilometres. After a quiet drink under the stars, surrounded by silence, LP folded up his chair and pushed it under the not-so-white vehicle covered in red dust, and climbed up under the canopy and settled down for a good night's sleep. Mitchy decided to knock down another beer and listen to some music before crawling into bed. During the night, the barometer dropped to almost freezing. Daybreak couldn't come sooner for them as LP started to stir. He stretched out his hands and started worming his way out of his not-so-comfortable makeshift bed and planting his feet back onto red dirt. Looking around, he spotted his shovel leaning up against the corner of the bull bar. He picked it up and continued walking into the bush to make a bush toilet, a hole in the ground, and then cover it with dirt. One thing LP was very wary of was snakes, especially after the snake attacked Mason, his old mate, on their road trip in the early 70s. LP was wiser from that. Pay attention to your surroundings, or if you're unlucky, you might get bitten on the arse while doing your morning constitutional. LP placed the shovel next to his axe, so not to forget it when packing up. He then started preparing to make bacon and eggs on toast. By the time Mitchy crawled out of bed, breakfast was ready as he handed him a plate saying, "Get this in you, and we're on our way as soon as we pack up." Well, there's an old saying, "We'll hit the road," was an understatement. Wallabies and kangaroos littered the road as roadkill. Eagles soared above, looking for a feed. On the stretch of road to Cunnamulla, Mitchy had to zigzag along. They reached their next destination without too much drama, since there was little traffic on the road and fewer animals feeding on the side of the road in daylight. Most of the animals killed at night were from road train bull bars, striking them dead. Stopping at the roadhouse on the outskirts of town, Mitchie filled up for the first time, and just in time as the fuel light flashed. Fill tank. $73 later, and checking the trip meter for how far they could go on a full tank was 840 kilometres. Before leaving Cunnamulla, they took a quick drive around town. It was known as the centre of the largest known body of underground water in the world. Cunnamulla is an Aboriginal word meaning long stretch of water, and the Warrego, river of sand, is the river, along with the artesian water supply that made the Mulga country viable for European settlement. The town became the home of the largest shearing shed in the world, shearing 500,000 sheep in a year. And in recent times, for the statue of a bushy, looking thoughtful as you drive into town, named the Cunnamulla Fella. Next destination, Broken Hill. Arriving at 7 p.m. at a Big Ten caravan park in Broken Hill, they proceeded to book in and find a campsite for the night. At least here, they could shower and freshen up and use the cooking facilities at hand, which they did. The next morning they were back on the road again, heading towards the South Australian border. They wouldn't be going to Adelaide, but would take the fork north to Port Augusta. Arriving there, it was time to stock up on supplies, mainly alcohol from the local bottle shop. Coronas were on the do list, and a hot chook for lunch from Woolies across the road. Mitchie asked LP to open up his map after loading their supplies in the back of the vehicle. He reached over and pointed to Coober Pedy on the map and said, "We can make it before sunset. You do some driving. I'm having a Corona." 7 hours of driving lay ahead with Mitchie's music blaring. Stopping every couple of hours to change drivers, the navigator would look for something to drink as they crossed paths, reaching in the rear window and digging deep. He'd find the coldest beer in the cooler. They arrived at 8:15 p.m, later than Mitchie calculated, and booked in at the tourist caravan park on the outskirts of town. It also had a restaurant with pizza on the menu. That solved where to sleep and eat in one go. The next morning, they packed up early, after LP heated up a can of cream of chicken soup to share for breakfast. Mitchie wasn't in the mood for sharing. He wanted something stronger, black coffee, to get his brain into gear. Before driving out, LP walked over to reception and handed over the amenity keys. The owner of the park may well have been the local tourist guide, pointing at a map on the wall, places of interest to see before leaving town. He told LP to walk in the front entrance of the resort in the main street. You couldn't miss it. Then turn left and you'll see stairs leading down to underground workings of an old opal mine. It's well worth looking at, and it's free to enter. And check out the underground church across the road. They took on board local advice and did a quick tour of a maze of tunnels under the resort. Memorabilia of yesteryear was displayed over the walls, and rusty digging equipment was roped off for safety. Next, LP strode across the road, leaving Mitchie walking around checking tyre pressure and lifting the bonnet to check fluid levels. Mitchie wanted to make sure everything was right for their next leg of their journey. Mitchie shouted out to LP as he crossed the road, "By the time I check over the vehicle, be out of there. Make it quick or I'll leave you behind." Under a pile of red dirt that was a roof on a church, LP pushed open a solid door, opening to a small entrance leading to another door. He turned the doorknob and gently pushed, and started to walk down the aisle until he was standing in front of the church altar. It reminded him of a grotto from many a movie watched. It was starting to give him goosebumps. It was like being transported back in time. Here was one man, a priest, performing a ritual started 2,000 years ago. As LP cast his eyes around, he realised there was no one else there, just him and a priest at the altar head down reading. He thought to himself, since they were alone, he could ask the question to the meaning of life in this sanctified place of worship. So what does LP blurt out when the priest stopped what he's reading? He asked, "Do you pull a better crowd than this on Sunday?" "Yes, 50 yesterday. And if you have any more questions, sit down there, and I'll speak to you later," while pointing to a pew. LP missed his opportunity to know more. He didn't know why he asked such a silly question, and didn't have time to wait to know what else could be revealed there. Mitchie was waiting outside, anxious to get on the go, and if LP didn't hurry up, his son might be true to his word and leave him behind. LP turned, walking out, cap in hand, sunglasses on, thongs flapping, and a t-shirt blazoned with a New Zealand map and a Kiwi bird on it. At that moment, he thought what he must have looked like to the priest. A Kiwi tourist, not a potential convert. LP stepped back into the passenger seat, and before he could click his seatbelt on, they were heading north out of town onto the main highway. Destination Uluru, but first they needed to fill up at the BP Roadhouse on the outskirts of town. After paying, they were back on the road with clear blue sky ahead of them, and to the west, thunderheads were brewing. Looking left and right as they left Kuba Pedy behind, what they witnessed resembled a bomb crater zone as far as the eye could see, with mounds of dirt looking like miniature pyramids. Their destination looked within reach after a few hours of driving, but they mistook a tabletop-looking mountain for the sandstone monolith Uluru on the horizon. LP looked at his map and said, "That's not Uluru, it's Mount Connor, and over to the west is Walper Gorge. Uluru is not much further." "Well, the old map has come in handy, since we can't get any GPS signal out here," said Mitchie. Mitchie kept a sharp eye on the road, as a wonder of nature seemed to swallow them as they entered the national park. Now, in the heart of Australia, the rock overshadowed their vehicle at the base of Uluru. Mitchie was keen on climbing it, but after reading about the rock and the Aboriginal trustees, it was clear they wouldn't be climbing Uluru today. It was closed for climbing indefinitely. Mitchie was disappointed. They took the long way around to get to Port Hedland. If it wasn't for sightseeing, they could have cut 1,000 kilometres of their trip by firstly heading north to Mount Isa, across the Barkly Highway and on to Katherine to cross the top end along the Great Northern Highway. Mitchie may have missed the opportunity to climb the Red Rock, but LP wasn't going to miss snapping some photos at sunset. They'd spotted a car park when entering Karda Juda National Park encompassing Uluru, renamed in 1958, which would be perfect for photos. They headed back the way they came, not before exploring around the base of Uluru that still some tourist companies call Ayers Rock. Named after the South Australian of the time, Premier Sir Henry Ayres, and discovered by Ernest Giles, an explorer, in 1872. If Giles had been able to speak the local language, the indigenous people, the traditional owners, would have told him, "The rock has been here as long as they have, going back to Dreamtime." It didn't need discovering. LP and Mitchie entered a cave entrance, what looked like a wave rock overhang protecting Aboriginal drawings, going back possibly tens of thousands of years. Not touching anything, LP got up close and snapped a couple of photos he hoped he could reproduce as prints on canvas when back home. They stopped at the car park where dozens of vehicles were parked. Light drizzle popped up the brollies from tourists standing against the fence line, trying to get a clear shot of the changing colours of the rock on sunset. As LP grabbed his camera and umbrella, he overheard one couple saying, "Pity about the rain, LP saw it differently." It's not often in this part of Australia you get much rain, let alone a rainbow striking the rock. That's exactly what LP captured. A rare moment that connected him to Aboriginal folklore of the rainbow serpent. LP left the car park, with Mitchie driving to the caravan park on the outskirts of the national park, 15 clicks back down the road from Uluru. On arriving, LP's plan was to freshen up, eat and hit the sack early, then get a head start on all the tourists next morning. Mitchie's plan was to stay up and knock down a couple of Coronas and see if he could attract some female talent walking by their somewhat messy campsite. Still dark when LP woke. To be exact, 4:30 a.m. He tried to wake his son, to no avail. What he'd find out later, Mitchie hooked up with a fellow female tourist and had a late night, leaving his son sleeping in the back. LP jumped in the driver's seat and headed out of the car park, with Mitchie somewhat cramped in after LP put all their gear back next to it. Arriving back at Uluru, at a different car park for sunrise, with walking trails lit up by low posts with solar lighting revealed paths to follow in the dark. One thing LP was unsure about: dingoes. The native Australian dog roamed this place and have attacked tourists in the past. LP didn't want to waste time thinking about what may be lurking in the dark. He walked the dimly lit trails, looking for a perfect vantage point for a sunrise shot. What one of the trails led to was a large elevated viewing platform. LP decided that was the best spot to set up, so he headed back to the vehicle and grabbed his camera gear. He tried to wake his son, but no go. He then returned to the deck and walked up 6 steps, turned left, and positioned his camera on his tripod up against the front handrail, ready for what Uluru is famous for, the changing colours of the rock. Tour buses were starting to arrive as LP looked back to see if Mitchie had stirred, but no sight of him yet. Tourists poured out of those buses. As well, hundreds more arrived by cars, and you don't have to guess where they were heading. Well, within minutes the platform creaked, with eager photographers crowding the viewing area. LP had laid claim to his corner, as tourists jostled shoulder to snap a memorable photo of sunrise at the rock. LP readied himself, for the moment, to capture the sun striking the rock from the east as he pointed his camera west. It was still overcast, and it would be later than sunrise, before the sun broke through low storm clouds. Mitchie by this time still hadn't risen, and LP couldn't go back for it, or he'd lose his position, and he didn't want to leave his camera and tripod unattended, even if he could push through the crowd. The moment arrived as cameras clicked, and the crowd was not disappointed. LP had captured a wonder of nature, as the colours of the red rock changed before his eyes. Whitish grey clouds streaked across the rock framed against a background of blue sky. LP hoped Mitchie would wake up and at least look out the tray-back window, because it was his idea to go the long way around just to see Uluru. And this moment was spectacular, and he missed it. Pushing his way through the crowd, LP headed back to Mitchie's vehicle and found him still asleep. Mitchie, wake up, last chance to see the rock. With no response, LP placed his camera gear on the back seat and drove out of the car park, heading for Alice Springs, leaving Mitchie to sleep in. He'd check on him in a couple of hours. After travelling east along the Lassiter Highway, then turning north onto Route 87, Stewart Highway, he veered off onto an expanse of red dirt after seeing only desert, bitumen, and the odd backpacker van go by. He stepped out of Mitchie's vehicle and thumped on the side window to wake his son up. It was his turn to drive. Mitchie shouted as he looked out the canopy window. "Stop the banging. Where are we?" "Not Uluru. You missed sunrise. We're on the way to Alice." "You drive," LP shouted back. Mitchie wriggled his way out of a warm bed, taking stock of where he was, and said, "Okay, let's keep on the move. We wouldn't want to break down here. It'll cost a fortune to get us out of trouble." Mitchie took control behind the wheel, accelerating, blasting a red dust cloud in the distance as tyres spun onto bitumen. Alice Springs looked like a too stubby trip for Mitchie if he had his way, but old man would not be happy seeing him knock down a Corona while driving, so that was not going to happen. With cloud cover still overhead, kept the temperature down to bearable for locals. Air conditioning now on for them was a cool change from the outback heat. Entering Alice Springs, they were confronted with the local prison on the left, with a billboard, "Welcome to Alice," in front of barbed wire fencing, and on the right, the airport. LP commented, "Local cops take seriously any minor breaches of the law. I know you can't drink alcohol in public places, or you'll get arrested. So don't rip the top off a Corona until we're out of town when I'm driving, or you could end up behind barbed wire or on a plane back to where you come from." "Got ya, let's fill up," Mitchie said. LP pointed to a Shell survey, 2 intersections down the road. Green lights showed the way. Mitchie turned right and pulled up next to the diesel Bowser. They both stepped out. Mitchie to fill the vehicle, LP to find a toilet. He was busting for a leak. Next he walked inside the front entrance to pay for the fuel. As LP walked outside, he heard Mitchie revving the engine, prompting him to jog over to an impatient driver ready to plant his foot down on the pedal and get on the move for the next leg of their journey. Mitchie said, "Take a look at the map. Old man, we're taking a shortcut across the Tanimi Desert, and we'll save 1,000 kilometres and make up a day's travelling time." LP's first thoughts were, it's a dirt track except for a couple of 100 kilometres of bitumen. LP figured he would be wasting his breath trying to persuade Mitchie from taking the Tanimi track. What they agreed upon when they started their road trip was to leave Alice Springs, head north to Tennant Creek and then on to Catherine, before tracking west across the top end of Australia. What was unfolding was the unknown. No phone reception, no recovery gear, and not enough fuel to make it to Halls Creek and back onto bitumen after 1,040 kilometres across the Tanimi Desert track. The best fuel consumption they had got so far was 840 clicks from a full tank. It wouldn't be enough, but Mitchie pointed out he had a long-range fuel tank and good for another 120 kilometres. Plus, they had the jerry can. By the time LP shuffled, opened his old map and checked if Mitchie was right, he just realised something important. When Mitchie mentioned the jerry can, they'd forgotten to fill it up. It was only half full and only good for another 80 kilometres. They argued over the map and changed of plan, as well, blaming each other for not filling the jerry can. Mitchie was already on the outskirts of town and he wasn't turning back. Mitchie's four-wheel drive would have to be very fuel efficient. On LP's calculations, they wouldn't have a drop to spare before making it to Halls Creek. LP reminded Mitchie, "You can't run a diesel vehicle bone dry, or you'll have to bleed the fuel line. Let's turn back and get more fuel. We won't make it." "You worry too much, old man. We'll be able to get more fuel on the Tanami track before it turns to dirt. The map shows a roadhouse at Tillmouth." LP was still concerned with the change of plan, but as Mitchie approached the turn-off for the Tanami Desert, LP said, "Let's do it." 166 kilometres later, they entered the roadhouse at Tillmouth, but it was closed. No one was there. It wasn't a township, just an old abandoned fuel stop surrounded by desert. LP said, "I guess the old map was older than I thought. We'll stop here tonight and go back to Alice and fill up again, and this time fill the jerry can." "Nope, we'll keep going. The map shows an Aboriginal settlement about another 100 clicks down the track. We'll get fuel there." "The map's that old, the Aboriginals will have gone on walkabout by now. It'll be deserted," LP said with a concerned look on his face. LP was not happy anymore and could not persuade his son to wait until morning. Before leaving the old roadhouse, LP went to the back of the vehicle and pulled out a couple of cold beers. One for now and one for later while Mitchie drove. It was a two-stubby trip when, in the distance, they spotted a sign you couldn't miss. "Last fuel for 740 kilometres. The sign was the size of a roadside billboard with a large arrow pointing right to a smaller dusty track. Mitchie said, "I told you. Nothing to worry about." "Really? Look at the gauge. It's dropped under 3/4. There better be fuel there, not abandoned like the last place," LP said. Just a few kilometres down the road, they entered the local Indigenous township. Nothing flash, but looked not abandoned. Homes could do with a lick of paint, but what stood out was their own Centrelink building for collecting government benefits. It was the best kept building they had seen in the township so far. Whoever worked in that green corrugated building certainly would need air conditioning on a hot summer's day. LP made the comment, "That tin shed's spotless. I reckon when Centrelink staff come out on pension day, they bring cleaners. I doubt if anyone else here would do it." "Forget about the building. Look for a Bowser," Mitchie said. It was still twilight, but time got away on them. It was 6:30 when LP spotted an Aboriginal man standing next to a small general store. Mitchie pulled up next to him and looked out from his window that was down and asked, "Where do we get fuel around here?" The answer was not what they wanted to hear. "Hey bro, no fuel here now. Come back tomorrow." "Okay, tomorrow," Mitchie answered. As he engaged the clutch and pushed the gear stick into first gear, he drove away slowly, not to stir up a dust storm. Mitchie turned, glancing at old man, saying, "I'll backtrack our way out of possible trouble. We're the only two white fellas here from what I can see. We can't stay here tonight. It's an Aboriginal settlement for locals only. I didn't see any signs about camping or accommodation, did you?" One word summed up their situation. "Nope," LP replied. Mitchie drove back the way he came and turned right at the sign that warned them of the danger ahead. LP looked on the map, did the sums again, and said, "We need to find a rest stop and set up camp and go back early tomorrow for fuel. I'm not turning back. We can make it." Mitchie was starting to sound like LP's old mate Bear, always overconfident. Minutes later, LP yelled, "Turn now." Mitchie swerved off the track and stopped in front of a small sign that read, "Truck rest area. For your safety, no camping." He thought that was odd, with an arrow pointing north and below it 33 kilometres. Nothing else was there, just red dirt. LP needed to convince Mitchie They had to stop somewhere, but definitely go back for fuel. People die in situations similar to what they're about to get themselves into. They were ill prepared for what lay ahead, and what was fast approaching. Tracking their way was a thunderstorm. Lightning, in the distance, lit up the night sky. It was the worst time to travel, with wallabies and kangaroos feeding on the side of the track, eating sparse, dry spinifex as tumbleweed rolled across a sparse landscape fanned by the approaching storm. The storm clouds looked menacing since leaving Kupapiti, tracking slowly north to Uluru, and now it seemed it was going to bucket down on them. If that happened, the track would turn to mud. Stuck they would be until rescued, and that could be a very long time, since they didn't tell anyone. They had changed their route, and now heading further into the Tanimi Desert. Mitchie drove away from the sign in the direction indicated. They might be light on recovery gear, but the shurus on the bull bar were working a treat. Mitchie's headlights acted like spotlights as ears pricked up from the high-pitched sound coming off their vehicle. Only some animals could hear. Literally, wallabies bounded from the edge of the dirt track where they were feeding, away from what was bearing down on them. What the shurus couldn't stop was the big reds hopping across the track in full flight. Only the bull bar would stop them, and that still would cause considerable damage to Mitchie's pride and joy. Luck was on their side. They reached the next rest stop without hitting any animals. Only two giant roos came out of nowhere. Mitchie's quick reaction, slamming on the brakes, avoided a collision, and with the storm now tracking west, it was one less thing to contend with. Eyes fixed on the new sign as Mitchie pulled off the track onto more red dirt. They looked at each other and couldn't believe what they were reading on a larger sign. Truck rest area. For safety, no camping. This time arrows pointed north and south. Go back 33 kilometres or forward 73 kilometres. Although there were no facilities like toilets, barbecue or shelter, just a vast expanse of emptiness and the black night peppered with white dots above. Mitchie wasn't going any further. Mitchie spoke first. We'll make camp here until daybreak. LP pointed to the sign lit up by the headlights and said, look again at what's sprayed on it. I see you, Mitchie replied. Bloody hell, this place is giving me the spooks already. After we eat, I'm locking myself in the front of the Forby. LP was still going to sleep in the back. They had no weapons except their short-handled axe and a large carving knife. Mitchie picked up the carving knife and headed for the front driver's side door, stepped in, supposedly, to lock himself away from anything out there. LP stepped up into his makeshift bedroom under the vehicle tray back canopy, with stars above to the horizon. As he wriggled up to put his head on a dusty pillow, he dragged the axe alongside. If anyone was going to try to drag him out by the feet, he was coming out wielding the axe. As he lay on his side, he wiped red dust from the side window and watched the stars give off a twinkle of light. His grip on the axe was tight, and to get his mind off the immediate danger, his thoughts turned to what to do with his book, Image of the Past, not the possible danger they were in. His conclusion seemed to be, bury it, leave it behind, and move on. He figured he'd spent enough time and money on it. Even though he was passionate and motivated to write it, he figured it was time to stop. After drifting off to sleep, it wasn't long before something unexpected happened. Suddenly, he felt a tap on his right shoulder, sitting now upright. In shock, he looked out the back, and the tailgate lights were on. He pushed his way out, holding the axe. Quickly, he went to check on his son to find out why. The headlights were blaring out to nowhere at 12:30 in the morning. Mitchie, wake up. Did you turn the lights on? The window was down, and the carving knife rested against the passenger seat. LP reached in and switched off the headlights. Again, LP yelled, did you turn the lights on? Silence. LP pulled the key out of the ignition as he stood next to the driver's door and dropped it on the floor and checked that his son was breathing. He could only hope the battery was not drained too much and Mitchie's vehicle would crank over at daybreak. LP couldn't make any sense out of what just happened. Maybe his guardian angel woke him, or his fortune-telling skills were not so rusty after all and still worked even when asleep. LP climbed back in under the canopy and plonked his head on a dusty pillow while gripping his axe tighter than before, just in case there was trouble out there lurking in the dark. Sunrise started the morning with a display of red and yellow colours on the horizon as LP opened his eyes. He was upbeat after a restless night. He didn't really sleep much after turning the lights off. He stepped down from the back of the four-wheel drive and walked over to the driver's door and gave Mitchy a shake on the shoulder. "Wake up, sleepyhead. I bet you don't know what happened last night. I'll fill you in while I finish making something to eat." "Nothing, I hope." "What are you making?" Mitchy asked, while wiping his eyes, stretching his arms, and giving out a big yawn. "Help pack up, and we'll get on the go early, after we eat what smells good," LP said. LP opened the driver's door and picked up the key off the floor. Pushing it into the ignition, he asked Mitchy to kick over the engine. "Why? We'll waste fuel." He said, "Pack up." "Just do it. We need to know if it'll start. I'll explain later." Luck was on their side, as Mitchy's vehicle started to crank over with a blast of black diesel smoke from the exhaust. Then he turned the engine off. LP explained to his son what happened while he slept, and finished packing up, ready to head off while munching down a bacon and egg toastie. Both were back in the vehicle, ready to head off, when LP said, "I've got something to do. Give me a sec." He reached over to the back seat and grabbed one of his books, Image of the Past. "I've just got to get the shovel out of the back." "You should have thought about having a bog earlier. You're holding us up. Hurry up, and you don't need to take a book to read," Mitchy said. LP started to dig a hole, but the ground was like concrete as the shovel bounced off baked red dirt. He managed to get to a depth of 10 centimetres. There he placed the book wrapped in alfoil with a note in it for anyone if they found it. He filled the hole and kicked a dry cow pat over it, then went back to the running vehicle and hopped in, after placing the shovel back behind the cooler where he got it from. They were on their way, with Mitchy taking the morning shift on traversing the Tanami track. As agreed, they would change drivers every 2 hours or so. The driving was not so boring, as they had to work the track to avoid the corrugation from the dirt road not being graded for quite a while. They owned the road, left and right, and just let the vehicle drift when it hit loose sand. It was a bit like driving on the beach to Double Island Point. There was no wrong side of the road out there, just more dirt stretching beyond the horizon that didn't seem to end, with patches of spin effects and the odd burnt-out abandoned vehicle. They keep a sharp lookout for kangaroos and wallabies that jump out of nowhere, or poisonous snakes like death adders, waiting for the unwary to strike when stopped. Free-range cattle posed a danger as well, and surprisingly, camels roamed the track too. Time ticked over in the morning without incident, while changing drivers at a cattle grid, and then a couple of hours later at a gold mine, with its own airstrip for fly-in, fly-out workers. No luck for diesel there, only aviation fuel. LP continued to check the fuel gauge. Running the vehicle without air conditioning, conserve fuel, and driving the vehicle with the revs between 22 and 2400 RPM helped too. These measures should help get them closer to Halls Creek, and with a bit of luck arrive at the BP Roadhouse to fill up. Look ahead, we've got another sign, and the fuel light's on. I'll stop at the sign and put the last bit of diesel in from the jerry can. I'm sure we're going to make it. There's still fuel left in the reserve tank, Mitchy pointed out. In front of the sign, left no doubt why the sign's read, "For your safety, no camping." They were on the road to Wolf Creek, known for its meteorite crater, but more so the movie that had similarities to the disappearance of Joanna Lee's boyfriend. The cops still haven't found his body. People can just disappear out here and never be seen again. LP and Mitchy stepped out of their four-wheel drive and surveyed the landscape. More desert, a dry creek bed, and more abandoned vehicles, and no shelter from the blistering sun. Having assessed their situation, it looked like they were still in the middle of nowhere, low on fuel, with another 2.5 hours before reaching Halls Creek. Mitchy pulled the jerry can forward from the back of the tray back, while LP removed the fuel cap. Then Mitchy started pouring diesel in, ever so careful not to spill a drop. LP was quick to put the fuel cap back on before taking over driving. He was trying to be upbeat about what they got themselves into, but had doubts if they'd make it to Halls Creek. Mitchy placed the empty jerry can next to the cooler, and then grabbed 2 beers from the cooler, then plonked himself down in the passenger seat. Mitchy's mouth was dry, and any amount of beer or water wouldn't wash the taste of the Tanami track from his mouth, but he'd give it a go. Even trying to peel the red dirt from his tongue by dragging his teeth on it didn't help. With the windows down for most of their desert journey, dust entered the cabin, and was painted red, and you couldn't keep it out unless you wound the windows up, and that was not going to happen until they hit bitumen and fill up. Then they can turn the air conditioning on and close the windows. LP slowly accelerated, trying not to spin the wheels and create a dust storm for more dust to choke on. It wouldn't be long before reaching their destination, and still no vehicles had passed them on the track all day, but up ahead, maybe their first encounter. It looked like a stationary vehicle. It could be another burnt-out wreck or someone stopped and in trouble. As they got closer, it looked like someone trying to wave them down for help. Or could it be something more sinister? LP said. I don't like the look of this. When we get up close, I'll decide to stop or not. Remember what the signs indicated. Don't stop. Keep that in mind as we assess the situation. LP slowed as he approached an old Toyota Land Cruiser that had seen better days. What he could make out was three blokes, not Aboriginal, but looked like young, lost backpackers and most likely clueless to what lay ahead of them. Mitchie could see they were definitely backpackers in need of help, as one guy rolled a tyre away from the back wheel. LP pulled up alongside them and said, Looks like you lot have got yourselves into a bit of trouble out here. Yeah, you have pump. His accent left no doubt who these guys were. German tourists. We need for other wheel. Get low too. No, LP said as he stepped out of his vehicle and inspected the other back tyre. It was half bagged out. Can't help. Turn back. Where you're heading, you won't make it. We have fuel for 300 Ks. We good. Just need air. LP was not getting through to this lot, so he added, Turn back. You need fuel for 700 Ks. You die out here, while pointing in the direction they were going, Halls Creek. LP had enough of this bunch of losers. Said no more, and stepped back behind the driver's wheel. Mitchie was already back in the passenger seat with his seatbelt on. LP looked back through his side mirror and said, We better report this lot to police when we get to the roadhouse. Who knows what they're liable to do next. With no phone reception, the backpackers were on their own, and so were they, until they got within range of a communication tower. Mitchie pushed on, keeping a close eye on the fuel gauge as they approached their destination, but it wasn't long before the red light came on, flashing, fill tank. LP's eyes focused on the red flashing light and said, as he took a deep breath, We're going to make with some diesel to spare. Entering what they thought was a township turned out to be just a few houses, pub, roadhouse, police station and school. LP pulled into the BP roadhouse and stopped at the diesel Bowser. Mitchie wasted no time in filling up as LP walked into the roadhouse and paid. Mitchie took over driving out onto the Great Northern Highway after LP hopped in with 2 meat pies, which he'd bought whilst in the roadhouse. Chapter 35. Time to relax. Back on track and hard bitumen, their next stop would be Derby, and find somewhere to set up camp for the night. It would take at least 6 hours to get there. Mitchie reminded LP about contacting the police, and he said, Okay, I'll ring when I finish my pie. On a straight stretch of road across the top end of Australia, seemingly to have no end beyond the horizon, LP glanced down and picked up his phone to find the phone number for the local police, and phoned. A woman answered, who he guessed was a cop, and proceeded to tell her about the backpackers out on the Tanimi track. The question was, do they have water? LP's reply was somewhat sarcastic. How would I know? Backpackers, huh? She answered back, and then there was silence from the other end of the phone. LP thought that was a bit rude. Possibly the signal dropped out, or maybe they get a lot of call-outs to tourists who just don't grasp how big this country is and get themselves into trouble. You can travel on some byways long distances without seeing anyone. For hours or days can be unnerving. Even the local Aboriginals sometimes get themselves into trouble out on these arid desert tracks throughout Australia and need rescuing, let alone tourists who have no local knowledge at all. 6 hours later, after a couple of driver changes, LP had taken over driving at the turn-off for Derby at around 8 p.m. It wasn't long before they entered the township after a short drive. Mitchie gave directions to pull into the local caravan park. LP followed his navigator's instruction and parked outside reception to book in. LP opened the driver's door, stepping down onto a concrete pathway leading to a blue door. He knocked briskly and was greeted by a chap in PJs answering the knock. It's too late to book in. Find somewhere in the park and set up camp. Fix me up in the morning. LP thought. He's a trusting soul. LP and Mitchie were pretty tired after taking turns driving over 14 hours from the Tanami track to Halls Creek and on to Derby. Knocking down beers along the way didn't help. They both had a headache. They pulled out some of their gear and made room to sleep in the back of the vehicle. The finish line was getting close after their challenging road trip, with just another 615 k's south left to go once they get to Broome. They survived the Tanimi Desert, and Mitchie's Holden Rodeo never missed a beat. Travelling over 5,000 k's in 6 days, without punctures or overheating. Next morning, they will be in no rush to get out of town, as reception didn't open until 7:30 a.m. Mitchie was up first and made a fresh brew of coffee and opened a tin of spaghetti to share for a change. LP climbed out of his not-so-comfortable bedding, still covered from the red desert dust. Everything needed to be washed, but that would wait until settling in at Port Hedland. After something to eat, Mitchie started up his vehicle, and they went for a drive along the main street of town, then headed for the town jetty to check out if they could fish. No locals were fishing, as it was low tide, and the jetty looked like it was not good for fishing off at that time. They headed back to pay at reception and made tracks for Broome, just 2 hours away. Arriving at Broome on the west coast of Australia, Mitchie was excited at seeing the ocean again, after so much dry land, and the first thing he thought of, I want to fish. The town beach was not near the town, but was also the meeting place for the local Aboriginals, who were congregated under a large tree as the temperature hit unbearable. What Mitchie thought was unusual, or more to the point, a West Australian police four-wheel drive vehicle drove off the bitumen and literally parted a group of about 30 locals in the shade of a large fig tree. One of the coppers spoke to some of them through the driver's side window, out of earshot. Mitchie, while standing on the sandy beach, thought what he might be saying, drink here or cause any trouble to tourists and we'll arrest the lot of you. LP and Mitchie turned away from what was unfolding under the tree. It reminded LP of the baobab tree they stopped at on the outskirts of Derby. It's about power and control. Nothing much has changed. You just don't see the chains. Before British colonisation, it was a ceremonial site for the indigenous local population. There, a tourist sign now told the story of what was an infamous part of Australian history called blackbirding, the forced removal of Aboriginal men from their traditional hunting ground, then sold into slavery. Old black and white photos depicted them chained together around the neck, with the baobab tree in the background, an Aboriginal sacred site. LP's thoughts turned to his mate Brownie, thinking if he saw this, he'd want to hunt down those responsible and enact Aboriginal payback. But of course, he's 200 years too late. Mitchie looked at LP and said, "What do you think? Are you keen on fishing? I want to try my new rod. What did you say?" "Fish." "Sorry, I was thinking of something else," LP replied. "Come on, take your mind off everything. We made it. Let's just relax and unwind after 6 days of grueling driving," Mitchie said, while pulling out his rod and tackle box from the tray back. "Well, let's not relax too much," LP said as he pointed to a yellow sign on the sand reading, "Recent croc sightings in the area, beware." "Ah, no wonder no one's in the water for a dip. I thought it was a bit strange, with those Aboriginal kids only playing on the rock groin," Mitchie replied. LP glanced back over to the shady tree and watched a cop drive his vehicle slowly back over the gutter, leaving the local Aboriginals standing on a patch of green grass. No one was arrested, but you could guess they were warned. Drinking alcohol in a public place will get them arrested, even if it was their sacred site. The cops drove out of the car park without giving all the backpacker vans a second glance parked near the foreshore as they headed back the way they came in. LP grabbed his rod too, and both cast out using lures for bait and waited for a bite. It wasn't long before movement from the water got their attention as a dog jumped in, and of course, dog paddled further out near their lines. Then another splash as some guy dives in and follows the dog out into deeper water. There was hardly any swell, more like at a still lake stretching to the horizon, until now. LP couldn't believe what he was seeing and said, "Must be a backpacker who can't read signs." "Backpackers, huh? He'll need rescuing soon, just like those Germans out on the track," Mitchie replied. They reeled in their lines, It looked like the only thing they were going to pull in today was a backpacker, a dog, or a croc. After packing away their fishing gear, they headed back into town to buy more beer and find somewhere to knock down a schooner of the local brew. At the bottle shop, LP paid for 2 cartons of Coronas and a bag of ice. He asked the attendant, "Hey mate, where's the best place for a beer around here with a view over the ocean?" He answered while the security guard watched on, "Just go round the corner and back up the main street. You'll see Castaway Resort. Out the back is a beer garden. Check it out. It's good for a coldie, and the ocean's right in front of you, mate." After taking on local advice, LP walked out past security and placed 6 beers in the cooler with a bag of ice on top. He then put the remaining cartons next to the cooler and followed the directions. Parking opposite reception, they walked in past the front desk at Castaway. Mitchy waved to the young girl there and said as he walked past, "Old man, I'll have a Corona with lime, your shout." LP walked around to the bar area as Mitchy went over to the edge of the beer garden overlooking the Indian Ocean. No problem finding a table, no one else was there, other than bar staff back where LP was ordering what his son wanted and pouring LP a drop of the local brew. "Swan Lager," the barmaid suggested. "It's what Westies reckon is the best beer in the world." LP had some bad news to report after talking to another barmaid while holding 2 beers. Placing the beers on the table, he said, "You wouldn't believe this. The road's closed to Port Hedland." "What the hell happened?" Mitchy asked. "You saw me chatting to the barmaids." "Yeah, it looked like you were trying to crack onto them." "Funny ha ha. No, there's fires burning on both sides of the highway south. One of my so-called girlfriends said her boyfriend works on a road gang and he can't make it back tonight. I'm off to check out what's the standby rack rate is if we stay here. We'll get an early start in the morning." LP booked in for $140 overnight twin share. He figured it was good value for a luxury resort. He walked back to Mitchy and gave him the good news. "We're staying here." After finishing his beer, LP went back to their vehicle and drove into the resort, parking out front of their new home. They removed what they needed for overnight into their new luxury accommodation, somewhat upmarket to what they were used to, sleeping rough across Australia. LP was going to take full advantage of this delay in reaching Port Hedland. He grabbed 2 stubbies from the back of the 4-wheel drive and shouted over to Mitchy, "I'm having a coldie in the pool. Come over, I'm cooling off." Mitchy joined him in the pool and chilled out with a cold ale in hand. Minutes later, Mitchy grabbed the attention of a barmaid in earshot. "Schooner of Swan and a Corona, thanks. Put it on room 120. LP had something to say about that, since he was paying. "Next shout, go back to the cooler and don't clock up anything more on my tab." It wasn't long before their space was invaded by a couple young blokes that were staying in the resort. Mitchy struck up a conversation with them and learned a thing or two about them. They were backpackers with a taste for luxury and had plans for tonight. What would transpire later was the young ones would head down to the backpacker hostel for a wet t-shirt contest. LP was invited, but he passed on that. LP was more interested in snapping a sunset and sunrise before leaving Broome. First, he shared a meal of noodles and beef stir-fry with his son. Mitchy's cooking skills were improving to the point that he might actually be able to fend for himself. It wasn't long before there was a knock on the door, and Mitchy was off with his newfound mates to check out Broome's nightlife. Then later head over to the local backpacker haunt for some fun and maybe get to know the winner of the wet t-shirt contest. Sunset wasn't until after 7 p.m, so after the boys left, LP walked around the headland from where Castaway Resort was located. Finding the best vantage point, he positioned his tripod with his camera ready to snap the setting sun. Smoke from fires burning down south acted like a lens filter to produce an image like looking at a planet through a telescope. Next morning, LP will be up before sunrise and eager to get on the go, but first he would have some sunrise photos taken from the resort. After he finished his photo shoot and walked back up from the flat sandy foreshore, he called out to Mitchy, "Get up, lazy bones, let's get on the move to Port Hedland." "Let me sleep in," he moaned. That didn't cut it with old man. "Come on, we can't waste time, and you can fill me in on what happened last night. You got in pretty late." Mitchy didn't have much to say about out on the town, except, "You should have been there. Those foreign backpackers got big tits, especially the winner. I got to dry her off." LP responded, "Sounds like I should have gone with you and your mates last night, but I would have missed sunset. Let's now try to focus on getting to Port Hedland without any more distractions or delays. I'm driving and I'll book out. I'll meet you at the front desk. Hurry up. I've just got to brush my teeth." "Don't rush me," said Mitchie. LP thought, "Son, you would test the patience of a saint." He walked out the door, started the vehicle and pulled up outside reception. Looking confident and refreshed, LP walked up to the young receptionist and commented, "This place is like heaven compared to some of the places we've camped at over the past couple of days." She smiled and said, "Have a safe journey. I'm in heaven every day. Where you are travelling along next will look like hell, from what one of the bar staff told me." LP pushed their room key forward, picked up the receipt as Mitchie joined him from their overnight stay in paradise. Although it looked like a clear run to Port Hedland with blue sky above, it was deceiving. A northeasterly wind pushed smoke from the burning fires down south. Within a half hour of travelling, they were confronted with still smouldering scrub. The receptionist was spot on. It looked like hell on earth. Tree stumps glowed with red ambers, looking like guideposts along a highway to nowhere, while smoke washed across parts of the roadway. Undeterred, they pushed on along a straight stretch of road for hours, without a bend in sight, another hazard to overcome boredom and fatigue before reaching their destination. They could tell they were close to Port Hedland when they entered an intersection you'd normally see driving into any capital, not a seaside township, but from this small township developed the largest port in the world, exporting gas and iron ore around the globe. LP pointed at the road sign above the highway and said quickly, "Turn left." They arrived, they made it, and so too Mitchie's vehicle in one piece. That afternoon, Mitchie settled into his new abode, a small bedroom that needed painting in a share house with 4 bedrooms, a filthy toilet that LP scrubbed out before using. It was so bad it should have been condemned. The squalid kitchen was not much better and in need of a reno. One good thing was a full-length covered patio at the back of the low-set house. 7 other workers would share the facilities, while they dream of earning the big money offered in Port Hedland. 24 hours later, Mitchie dropped LP at the town airport for boarding a Qantas flight to Perth. Then he'd connect with the red-eye flight, so called because it takes off at 11:30 p.m. and arrives at Brisbane at 5:30 a.m. the next day. LP said his goodbye and gave Mitchie a big hug, reminding him he was only a phone call away. LP didn't leave Perth Airport. No time for sightseeing. He just checked in and waited for his flight. At 11 p.m, the boarding call for his flight brought him to attention and quickly followed other passengers onto his flight. He plonked himself down in the left aisle seat 53D after placing his carry-on luggage above. Just before takeoff, one of the young, pretty cabin crews greeted LP and said, "After we level off, there's more room to stretch out up front. Business class is not full." He figured she thought he was a bit cramped, after seeing him angle his left knee into the aisle and looking somewhat uncomfortable. Being helpful, she suggested moving up front when the seatbelt light turned off after takeoff. Chapter 36. Nostradamus' Prophecy. As the plane taxied down the runway, it reminded LP of bumping down the tarmac at JFK Airport, leaving New York behind in 2012. Thoughts returned to the question he asked himself back then. Why? Why New York? Why did the scroll need to be delivered and be in water? Why did he need to be there over Easter? Part of the questions now could be answered, but others not. Why fulfill the prophecies from a 16th century soothsayer that coded his writings and made no sense to most people or scholars? But hundreds of books have been written about him and his visions of the future coded in quatrains. Ding, the seatbelt turned off. LP looked down to business class, watching the stewardess about to push a silver beverage food trolley forward. He stood up, stretched his legs, and walked down the aisle. Before she started serving passengers, he spotted a row of seats empty and shuffled himself along to the window seat. As he sat down, he grabbed a throw rug and pulled it over his somewhat outstretched body, taking up all 3 seats, thinking, "Now this is comfortable." As he drifted in and out of sleep, his mind connected with his deeper self, that he now calls Lewis Phillips, the writer, the visionary, who sees the future, getting him out of many a life's threatening situation, and along with foresight, making decisions came easy. What turned over in his thoughts relating to New York was, for what reason did he need to be at ground zero in the first place and deliver the scroll? The sight of destruction that had befallen the Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan fits a quatrain of Nostradamus. LP thoughts were muddled, jumping from one line of thought to another. But what resonated, beyond leaving a copy of the scroll at ground zero and boarding the Staten Ferry, and dropping a second copy of the scroll into the Hudson River to flow out into the Atlantic Ocean, still puzzled him. The fact that a quatrain related to LP's presence in New York could justify for him why travel there in the first place from Las Vegas, rather than go back to San Francisco for sightseeing. Firstly, Nostradamus, in his coded writings, mentioned the new city that scholars believed was New Amsterdam, now known as New York. The quatrain goes something like this. One will travel from the east and stand in the shadow of towers. He will be marked on the face with a gap between his teeth and bald. LP fitted the description above. He travelled from the east to the new city. New York was bald and had a gap between his teeth and a birthmark on his left side of his face. Another quatrain was interpreted by scholars of medieval literature to predict the destruction of the World Trade Center Twin Towers. And there he stood at ground zero, where once the towers stood tall, casting shadows. It was an eerie feeling, an uncanny fit that Nostradamus predicted. Now it seemed to include LP. Was it coincidence, fate, or chance that LP stood at ground zero, half a world away from home? His answer for why New York was becoming clear. The image he now called Zero, the beginning of time, that became part of the scroll, coupled with the mantra, seemed to have some magical power when the image appeared while whispering the mantra and looking at the scroll. It seemed to unleash the power to connect with something greater than self, the infinite universe. Some say mystics and prophets tapped into what some describe universal thought, connecting with future events because it's happened elsewhere in other worlds, parallel universes, and thus give warning to avoid disaster if heeded. It's a long bow to draw, but LP was drawn to the conclusion that whatever we perceive God as, the true God, the eternal God of creation, or something else, is part of, but may well be beyond existence as we think, and thus uncomprehending to the human mind. The scroll, he figured, is the prophet for our time, and LP delivered the scroll to ground zero, and he thought this would bring peace and healing for those that lost loved ones from the fall of the towers. Add in the symbolism of Easter, becomes a potent mix for renewal and forgiveness. And why did the scroll need to end up in water? Well, LP assumed it was symbolic of baptism, to clean the earth of the poison of destruction, and now one of the copies of the scroll is immersed in one of the great oceans of the world flowing out from the Hudson River. LP's plan when arriving back in Australia was to allow another copy be taken out by the current into the Pacific Ocean from Dicky Beach. And with a trip across Australia, unbeknown to him when in New York, he would again travel from east to west, this time across Australia to another new city, and cast another scroll, this time into the Indian Ocean. LP hadn't mentioned to Mitchie why he was so quick to volunteer to be his co-driver across Australia, as it fitted in with taking the scroll across the continent to Port Hedland and leave it to flow out from the harbour as the tide was going out into the Indian Ocean. More thoughts captured the memorable moments he enjoyed with Ingrid before returning to Australia via their 5-day stopover in Los Angeles to see Disneyland, Warner Brothers, Movie World and Hollywood after leaving New York. Ding, as the cabin light came on, with the pilot saying, "We are starting our descent shortly and touchdown in Brisbane is on schedule. The weather is fine. Please fasten your seatbelts. Cabin crew prepare for landing." 4 weeks went by before LP heard from his son unexpectedly. He answered his phone in bed, having decided to hit the sack early after not picking the Melbourne Cup winner that paid big time. His psychic skills were starting to let him down these days. So, to help a good night's sleep, he knocked down a couple of buds before retiring. That didn't help much either. He was just starting to think about how Mitchie and him survived the Tanami track and made it to Port Hedland. All was good now, or that's what he thought, until the phone rang, hearing his son's voice. "Old man, Mitchie here. I've run into a bit of trouble. I'm listening, but do realise it's dark over here and I'm in bed. First, I won't put you on speaker, for your mother to hear what you're about to say. You do remember her. She's worried sick about not hearing from you. Now what's up? It's not what's up, it's what's down. I went for a fish. I've hit a sinkhole at Pretty Pool, and the vehicle's down to it, axles like in quicksand, Mitchie said. Pretty Pool is a spit of sand and mangroves jutting out from Port Hedland. It's a recreational area for fishing and driving on the beach. Venture further south, and it's an optional clothing beach. Have you phoned a tow truck mob? LP asked. Yes. One bloke came out while there was still plenty of light and said he wasn't going anywhere near it. Look up to the roadway. There's plenty of houses with four-wheel drives parked out front. I drove down to Pretty Pool in your vehicle on the Sunday morning while you were sleeping in. Go up and knock on a couple of doors and see if anyone will help you. As well, watch out for crocs. There were signs up on the road saying there were recent sightings. Mitchie was getting frustrated with old man's advice. He phoned to let him know what was happening, not get a lecture. I can't talk anymore. The water is up to the doors, and I'm trying to salvage what I can. My phone will be the last thing I take out when I pull the cord out of the cigarette lighter. Then it'll be dead. And if I don't hurry, me too. Then there was silence. The phone disconnected. LP shouted out, Ingrid, I've just heard from Mitchie, and you better be sitting down when I tell you what's happening. It was a restless night for both, hoping their son was okay. There was no other way to contact him. They didn't know who he was working for, or even a contact number where he was staying. His phone was their only link to him. Next morning, after Mitchie was able to charge his phone, he phoned his father to give him the bad news. My pride and joy went under twice. It's a write-off. LP asked, what are you going to do now? I could do with $500. They're slow payers on the new job site. I'll need it to pay the tow truck guy and get some new wheels. You'll need more than loose change for that. No, I'm getting a skateboard to get around on until the insurance payout. Son, you're living on the edge. I'll transfer the money today. Fix me up when you're on top of things. Okay, talk to you soon. Just as LP hung up, another call came through. He could see it was Bear. How's it going? Still planning to climb Mount Biwa? Yep, 23rd. Make sure you're fit enough to make it, LP replied. 23rd of what? January. That when the sun sets on the peak of Mount Biwa, that's when you'll find out more about the scroll. How's that bloody Archaea thing? I've done some homework on the internet. It's a disaster waiting to explode. It's beyond belief. Bloody hell. What else have you unearthed about it? Bear asked anxiously. Probably no more than what you'd find in Wikipedia. The only people who could shed some light on it may be climate scientists. It needs a peer-reviewed paper linking Archaea as a hotbed for global warming, as well fossil fuels. Climate change deniers have sway for now, but they need to pull their heads out of the sand, join the dots. Analyse the data and get on board with the rest of the population fixing the problem, LP answered. Okay, that's a mouthful. I'll keep researching if I can find out more about these resilient ancient inhabitants of Earth and let you know what I come up with. And how to keep these buggers buried for another billion years, Bear said. What I need to know now. Are you good for the 23rd? LP asked. All being well, I'll see you then, responded Bear with a bit of a chuckle. LP was happy to hear Bear would back him up. Now it was time to contact Mason at his Masonic retirement village before roles reversed and he becomes a resident with mobility issues. He figured a face-to-face call will get a positive response. A phone call would be too easy to fob him off. Hi, could you let your CEO know I'm here to see him? Thanks. The receptionist replied. And you are? And do you have an appointment? Just tell him it's LP. Your boss knows me. LP was glad it wasn't the same receptionist. Bear gave a hard time too when he last asked the same question long ago. Hopefully, the old dear would be part of the retirement crowd. And recovered from the hard time Bear gave her back then, when he threatened to kill her if she didn't show them to Mason's office. The young receptionist looked at LP and nodded, then proceeded to walk with him to Mason's cedar-panelled office door, knocking twice, then opened the door and let him in. Hi LP, what's happening? Mason asked. Just letting you know Bear arrives on the 23rd to climb Mount Biwa. I'm just here to make sure you're in. Last thing I heard, the old fart was using a walking frame to get around, but if he's in, I'm in. Good, bring your climbing boots. I'll be in touch, LP replied. Would it be too much to ask, why are we climbing Brownie's Mountain? Yes, you'll find out then. Just be there. 23rd, January. Put it in your diary, LP said. Mason asked one other question before LP left. Why is there some misunderstanding relating to the numbers and New Year's Eve? As you know, the numbers you revealed back at the ancient Aboriginal site after you were struck by that deadly snake and almost died were 0101100000. We understood it to be the first day of the new year, midnight 0000, the year 2010, that being New Year's Eve 2009. That's where some mistook the date to be, New Year's Eve 2010. Once explained that 0 inches railway or military time is the start of the next day, also at midnight, there is no issue. There was no mistake with the upload and download of the scroll, no confusion if you account for railway time, LP continued saying. And you heard what happened on New Year's Eve 2010, so I won't repeat myself. Next, it was a phone call to Brownie when LP got back home from seeing Mason. Who is it? Speak up, you're breaking up, Brownie here. LP walked outside, but reception was still crackly. He shouted, It's LP. Are you good for the 23rd? January for the climb up your Dreamtime relative. The line dropped out, or he hung up from LP's sarcasm. LP wanted him there, because they'd been through so much relating to the scroll, and wanted his mate's strong connection to the Dreamtime spirits of the Glass House Mountains. He would try to ring again. No joking around, just get to the point before anything else happens. That left Cato to contact. LP scrolled through his contact page and pressed on Cato's name. G'day mate, what's up? Was Cato's first comment. Are you up for climbing Mount Biawar on the 23rd? January? I'm up for an operation. Could go pear-shaped on the 1st February, so if anything going to kill me, it might as well be the mountain. I know the way up. I'll be the guide as far as I can make it. Then you're on your own. I can't ask for more. I'll talk to you before then. LP replied with a sigh of relief. LP rang Brownie again. Where on earth are you? You keep dropping out. Just driving on the outskirts of Charleville, 1,000 k's west of Brisbane. No wonder I can't pick up reception. Hey, all but you have given the thumbs up to climb the mountain on the 23rd. Are you in? What mountain? Brownie replied. It better not be Mount Biawar. I'll leave you guessing. You'll need to be there to try to stop us, or be with us. LP answered. I'll see you then. What month? And we'll see who's climbing the mountain. January, LP replied. Not exactly the response he wanted from Brownie as he disconnected, but he'll be there, LP thought. Finally, he had his mates almost on side for the climb, with Brownie's secret knowledge to connect with his Dreamtime ancestors, Mason with his Masonic beliefs. That puts him on a path to connect with his immortality. Bears never give up attitude, and Cato's climbing knowledge of the mountain should be enough to see LP reach the peak to make known. For what I see, you'll see. For what I know, you will know. The secret revealed within the scroll LP had discovered was not what could be learnt, but what could be bestowed upon those with an open heart, peace, and forgiveness. Chapter 37. The Archaean Ancient Kingdom. LP's view was not dissimilar to scientific consensus relating to climate change, and was somewhat in sync with experts in the field of studying global warming. Overwhelming, they agree through peer-reviewed publications and come to the conclusion man-made carbon emissions are contributing and increasing the risk of further adverse climate change that will affect livability on the planet throughout the 21st century. LP calculated in two other possibilities: global dimming from a 3-kilometre layer of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, and methane producing, Archaea, seldom mentioned in mainstream thought relating to climate change. LP formed his own view, not peer-reviewed, but still valid if research. The greatest risks to our way of life are the ancient ones, Archaea, and warming oceans already on the rise, and changing wind patterns in the northern Pacific as the permafrost melts in the Arctic, accelerating the problem. The awakening of Archaea and the thinning of the Arctic ice shelf will exacerbate global warming, and is a potent mix that will cause a rapid rise of methane in the atmosphere, 30 times more potent than carbon. Natural carbon sinkholes can't absorb the burning of fossil fuels fast enough, let alone the release of unsustainable amounts of methane as well. With the planet's ecosystem out of balance, with the natural order of things of past centuries, methane, from thawing tundra, the ocean floor as oceans warm, due to the lower layer of the atmosphere radiating heat back to Earth, scientists refer to as the greenhouse effect, a recipe for disaster. Climate scientists have been vilified by skeptics and climate change denialists. LP figured. Unless the fact that 97% of peer review research by scientists in their field of expertise relating to factual current data is accepted relating to global warming and not negated by propaganda, fake news, peddled by media, social media, on behalf of big business, nothing will change. He hoped social media would get the truth out and negate the influence of media barons who rely on advertising dollars from corporations and hence vet any negative reporting that may impact on their clients. It's not their business to save the planet, only report news that sells papers, hold viewers to the 6 o'clock news, and deliver a profit at the end of the day to shareholders. It seemed obvious data relating to global warming has been suppressed, and you can only hope the truth would get out somehow. It looked like even 100% consensus will not sway those with power and influence. What the public needs to do is get behind the facts and protest for change. Relating to scientific data from experts in their field of study, climate change, who overwhelmingly agree through peer-reviewed publications, there is a real threat to civilization as we know it. LP's research on global dimming didn't negate global warming. What it meant is the sun is going through a period of lower solar activity, which would have plunged the world into a mini ice age, similar to the one in the middle of the last millennium, if not for carbon buildup in the atmosphere. What has occurred more so in the northern hemisphere is the buildup of greenhouse gases in the lower stratosphere. Good for plant growth, but bad as the ocean warms, and the North Pole in particular melts. Not so good news. What this also means, as glaciers retreat and tundra in the north becomes exposed, algae-like blooms will become more prevalent. The ancients, from the Greek word Archaea, are returning, and their contribution is methane, more potent than burning fossil fuels. If left unchecked, will return the world to their kingdom like billions of years ago. LP thoughts rolled back to 2010, a time of extreme weather not only in Australia but throughout the world. It was Earth's most turbulent weather since 1816. The Amazon experienced its second 100-year drought in 100 years. With unabated clearing of the rainforest, the ability for it to remain a major factor in absorbing carbon is under major threat through land clearing and burning. Its role in this complex biosphere is clear. It takes out 2 billion tonnes of CO2 out of the atmosphere a year. But due to drought in 2005, caused a net 5 billion tonnes to enter the atmosphere. The Amazon as well stores carbon dioxide in soil and biomass equal to almost 15 years of human-causing emissions, which may well be released if global warming measured by carbon in the atmosphere exceeds 350 parts per million. It's already surpassed 400 parts per million in some parts of the world. 20 million people were moved to higher ground when flooding affected Pakistan, and thousands of the population died from the flooding. Moscow scorched under its worst heat wave in living memory. Extreme heat wave conditions in the Arctic have recorded hotter temperatures than cities across Europe and North America. And 2011 fared no better with drought, wildfires, famine and earthquakes, to name a few. Christchurch, New Zealand, and even worse, in Japan, an 8.9 magnitude earthquake caused a tsunami engulfing Fukushima and taking out its nuclear power plant. It was estimated 15,000 people died. Drought throughout East Africa, impacting Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Djibouti in June and July caused widespread famine, accounting for deaths of tens of thousands of children. The Philippines was hit hard in December by a severe tropical storm bucketing down. So much rain in such a short time caused widespread flooding and a death toll in the thousands. In April, tornadoes ripped through the Alabama region, causing severe damage and many deaths. And on May 22nd, another tornado destroyed the town of Joplin, Missouri. 2012 played out with more severe weather, fires, storms, and earthquakes. In January of 2013, Cyclone Oswald struck the North Queensland coast, causing extensive property and crop damage, as well major flooding. Severe flooding occurred after Mexico was hit by Hurricane Ingrid, and in North America, Oklahoma bore the full impact of a severe tornado killing 24 people, destroying homes and infrastructure in May. Typhoon Haiyan, more destructive and larger than Hurricane Katrina in 2005, caused a 4-metre storm surge in November, resulting in major damage to roads, water, sanitation and infrastructure. The storm displaced millions of people and killed hundreds in the Philippines. LP's view of these so-called natural disasters are not so natural. They are more intense and more often. Looking back over the past 15 years and comparing statistical data going back over the past 100 years showed an increase in extreme weather, even taking into account the scientific view relating to Australia going through a 100-year cycle of more dry than wet. This assessment was too simplistic in explaining away drought and wildfires as the norm. They were happening too often and more chaotic in nature, not only in Australia, but throughout the world. Without exception, 2014 brought more flooding in places like the Solomon Islands, Bosnia, and Pakistan, to name a few. Typhoons hit the Philippines, earthquakes in Yan'an Province, China, and throughout the world. Billions of people were sensing something was wrong and could be seen, expressed in anxiety and violence as the temperature rises. The climate looked like spiraling out of control. If you join the dots, you'd get global warming, caused by man-made burning of fossil fuels, creating the perfect storm. News reports attributed heat waves in 2015 killing close to 55,000 people throughout the world. And if global warming is not stopped, then expect more of the same by 2035. 2016 gave no reprieve from famine, earthquakes, firestorms, tornadoes, cyclones, and typhoons across the globe. Chapter 38. Stars Align. 23rd January 2016. News on TV, in newspapers and social media were reporting on an astronomical event that will not be seen in the night sky again until July 2020. And who knows when, on the 23rd of January again. LP was now joining the dots relating to the Glass House Mountains and the sun setting on the peak of Mount Biwa from Bullcock Beach vantage point. At the mouth of Pumicestone Passage, LP spent many an evening there over the years capturing sunsets across Pumicestone Passage, looking to the Glass House Mountains on the horizon in the laid-back beachside town of Caloundra. Those mountains formed from volcanic plugs, remnants of volcanic activity 26 million years ago, or as Brownie tells it from Aboriginal folklore. His mob lived by the sea, but retreated inland as the great waters swallowed up the rivers and streams. They took sanctuary in the deep forest. But there, Biwa, Tibragargan, Kunoran, and his brothers and sisters, who were turned to stone after Tibragargan turned his back on his son, Kunoran, for disobeying him, by not helping his mother, who was pregnant, and his siblings get to higher ground. Kunoran, only thinking of saving himself, caused the rainbow serpent of Dreamtime to turn them into stone, as a warning to all. Now, LP had another story, and it goes like this. In the beginning, he and his mates were entrusted with a scroll at an ancient Aboriginal ceremonial site in outback Australia that involved the numbers 0 and 1. 0 and 1 relating to a date in time, an image that some could see, and the secret knowledge that would unfold over time. It was only in 2010, after the upload of the scroll on New Year's Eve, that LP discovered the sun set on the peak of Mount Biwa on the 23rd of January, looking from Bullcock Beach. Another coincidence relating to numbers. But now, aware that the planets were aligning on the 23rd January 2016, as well as a full moon, things started to fall into place, relating to something he had sketched many years earlier. A triangle drawn over a drawing of the setting sun on the peak of Mount Biwa, exactly fitting over the sun. It was an equilateral triangle measuring 23 millimeters. This sketch foretold the alignment of planets and sun, as well as a full moon rising on the 23rd January 2016. It was becoming clear these events were more than coincidence. And what was becoming clearer based on signs in heaven above and on earth encompassed one thing: the peak of Mount Biwa. Not only did the sketch reveal something new, it also revealed a facial image on whatever angle you move the page. Eerie maybe, but not intentionally sketched. It is what it is, a ghostly image. It just appeared as a ghostly aberration. What had been on his mind for more than a year was to reach the peak of Mount Biwa and make known what else could be revealed from the scroll. That time was approaching. All would be revealed on 23rd. But obstacles arose, prompting LP to contact his mates days before they planned to climb to the summit. Bear wasn't impressed when he heard the news, since he'd already booked his flight and wanted to know what's the new date. LP told him to hold off booking another flight just yet, because his daughter was about to arrive from Cairns on the same day of their planned climb, and he had to pick her up. What he didn't tell everyone, Ingrid reminded him, their granddaughter's birthday party was on the 23rd. This was about to become an issue on reaching the summit by sunset and being there when the planets aligned. There were no ifs, buts, or maybe. LP's attendance was required at their granddaughter's party as well to pick up their daughter from the Brisbane airport that morning. There will be no time for going off with his mates climbing Mount Biwa if Ingrid has her way. LP tossed over in his mind how he could get a compromise out of Ingrid and still reach the peak of Mount Biwa as the sun set on the 23rd January. Impossible, he figured. But he had a light bulb moment. Pick up his daughter at the airport, drive to the car park at the base of the mountain. Walk and climb a third of the way and leave his latest book, I Am the One, Lewis Phillips, with a handwritten message on the inside cover for someone to find. He hoped when someone removed the shrink wrap and read the message inside, it would go viral through social media for all the wrong reasons. It needed something more added. But it would get his book noticed and potentially a book deal beyond self-published. All he needed was someone to take it up the mountain. He'd already penned a few words on a yellow post-it note and stuck it on the cover before shrink wrapping. It read, "Whoever picks up this book, please take it up the mountain and leave it there. Thanks, Lewis Phillips." So if he couldn't climb it, he was going to be there one way or another. What he would do is ring around to get a flight over the mountain on sunset. Helicopters no go, but he managed to contact a pilot whom he had flown with before in a Waco replica 1938, single-engine open cockpit biplane. It seated two in the front and one behind for the pilot. Rodney remembered the last time he flew with him and gave instructions on what time to be at the airstrip. Weather permitting, takeoff would be 4:45 p.m. The forecast was for thunderstorms in the afternoon. Rodney only gave a 50-50 chance of taking off from the tarmac if the weather didn't improve as well. He would be pushed for time with an engagement party to attend later. The day arrived to pick up Nikki from the airport, about a 1 hour drive from the Sunshine Coast. Ingrid and LP would pass the Glass House Mountains on the way to the airport, following the Bruce Highway and turn off for the domestic terminal. Minutes from the airport, the phone rings. LP pressed speaker and answered, "Hi Nikki, are you at the pickup area?" "Almost," she answered. "We're just about to pull up in the black cruise. I'll flick my lights on," LP said. No time for small talk. Nikki quickly opened the back passenger door, threw her carry-on case in, and followed, slamming the door shut. "Let's get out of here. It's bedlam," she said. "Love you for doing this. You know I could have caught the bus." "Wouldn't have it." "Anyway, I've got a surprise for you," LP replied. "What is it?" Nikki asked. "I'll tell you when we get to the base of Mount Biwa," LP said. "Mum, what are you up to?" "I'll let him explain," Ingrid said. "It's not dangerous so long you follow me and don't touch anything you're not supposed to," LP said while looking at Nikki in the rear vision mirror, giving her a reassuring wink and smile. Ingrid was not sure what he was up to either, but it better not interfere with their granddaughter's birthday party or she'll not be happy. The pickup area had only one rule: don't park and wait. Just pick up or get fined by overzealous traffic controllers. Forget about road rules. It was every man for himself, or woman. Road rules went out the window there. The only thing that mattered was pull over, pick up, and get out as quickly as possible. "Hang on," LP said in a loud voice, while thinking it's like driving Dodgems at the local theme park. He accelerated from the gutter, swerving to miss, in coming and outgoing traffic chaos, and headed back onto the highway heading north. First stop, Mount Biwa. Mother and daughter chatted while LP drove, tossing over in his mind his plan when they reached Mount Biwa. Anyway, what happened about Mitchie's vehicle? Nicky asked. Insurance crowd are slow on paying out. It's been 8 weeks and still no payout. We'll know more next week, said Ingrid. After crossing the Pine River Bridge on the outskirts of Brisbane, traffic congestion was still heavy. By the time they approached the Steve Irwin Way to fork left, it wasn't long before they passed the car park at Mount Tibrogargan. Turning left at the next intersection and sharp right at an old homestead, and they'd be almost there. Little traffic now, just woodland with a sprinkling of homes, cattle properties and macadamia plantations, a photographer's paradise to drive through. While passing Mount Coonarin on their right, suddenly LP crossed to the opposite side of the road, braking hard on loose gravel. Cattle had moved up close to the fence line, 20 metres from the roadway. He quickly stepped out from behind the wheel with his Olympus camera in hand and trotted his way through long grass while keeping a sharp eye out for any surprises, snakes underfoot and spiderwebs ahead. The cattle were inquisitive and approached closer. LP aimed his camera and clicked off in rapid fire to capture a perfect shot of good breeding stock with Mount Coonarin in the distance. Back in the Navara, LP said to Nicky, "That would be a top photo to paint. I'll send it to you." "Thanks, Dad. I've almost finished painting the one you emailed last month." You know its nickname, Crookneck. She opened her phone and showed him the painting she was working on. LP nodded and said, "Looking good, I'll buy it when finished." Twisting bends on narrow bitumen lay ahead as LP accelerated away, whipping up a trail of dust behind him. "We're almost there. The mountain turn-off is just past that macadamia plantation where the dirt road forks," LP said with confidence. LP stopped in front of a sign depicting what you can and can't do when climbing the mountain or walking the trails. He turned to Nicky and said, "It's your birthday on the 23rd of March, so just in case we don't catch up then, here's a birthday surprise. We're going to climb up part of the mountain. I know how you love hiking. And then, in the Arvo, we'll fly over Mount Biwa on sunset. It's an early birthday present for you. How good's that? I can see how we'll walk the mountain trail, but fly over it in what? If I tell you, I'll spoil the surprise. Let's do this first." What he didn't say as well was why he put his novel titled I Am the One in his small backpack along with his camera and bottle of water. He would fill Nicky in on what he planned to do after they walked and climbed the trail to a location that presented a challenge for climbers to reach the peak. There he would explain what his intentions were, then and only then. Ingrid said to her daughter, as she and LP started to walk away, "If it gets dangerous, don't listen to your father. Turn back. It won't be a problem, Mum. I've done plenty of backpacking on trails in Asia. You wouldn't want to know about the obstacles encountered there. Don't worry." Nicky replied as she gave her mother a reassuring hug before walking away. Nothing was going to stand in LP's way. He was following through and getting his book with a message written on the inside cover to the peak. The handwritten message contained inside the cover made a statement. For what he knows, you will know. But there's more to be revealed in his book. All he needed to do was get it noticed in a big way, one way or another. Even though LP buried the original book titled Image of the Past in the desert hoping that would end it, it wasn't over. He was motivated to write again and continues his story with a new cover, I Am the One, by Lewis Phillips, detailing his journey of discovery relating to the scroll, spanning 4 decades. Firstly, travelling down south to Bells Beach with his mates for a surf contest in Australia, while being pursued by bikies that wanted to kill them. Bear and Brownie confronted the Bad Meadows bikie gang on a lonely stretch of highway. Outnumbered, Big Time won the battle. George disappeared mysteriously after being shot by Herbertson, a crooked cop. Red was never seen again after his canoe capsized in rapids at Big River after discovering a gold nugget weighing over 3 kilos. Casa, LP's albino mate, didn't make it out of Asia alive. And Cato, inventor, hindered by government once authorities found his invention and saved 80% off power bills, was always the skeptic. He kept LP grounded and not let him get too overexcited with his mission in life, to finish what was started back at the ancient Aboriginal site in outback Queensland, to save and deliver the scroll. LP's journey to New York to stand at ground zero and deliver the scroll in the end, didn't go exactly as planned. Mason helped with advice, with his connection to Masonic beliefs, and how to achieve his brand of glorious immortality. Without Brownie's Dreamtime connection with the legend of the Glasshouse Mountains, LP would not be standing before the mountain to climb it. LP travelled through many parts of the world, but his journey always ended back at the mountain. Now destiny awaits again. LP and Nikki trekked through dense forest, following the trail to a place on the mountain LP had visited many times before. He knew the lay of the land to that point. 300 paces from the car park to a clearing and barbecue area, then another 700 before a full assault on the mountain. Brimming with confidence, LP pushed on, followed by Nikki, after stepping up some well-placed stones where fresh water trickled down. And there it was, the peak in sight, with low cloud moving across the top of the mountain. LP said to Nikki as they stepped onto flat ground, "We can't stay long. Read that sign over there." Nikki repeated what she saw. "Beware, rockfalls. Do not wait in this area." LP went on to say, "Let's make it quick. I want you to take a short video of why I'm leaving this book here. And hopefully someone will pick up the book and take it up the mountain." He pulled out his camera and book from his backpack and handed Nikki the camera while he held his book in his right hand. LP then said, "Nikki, turn the camera onto video, and when I say start, click the left-hand top button to record." As Nikki was about to film, 3 strangers approached from where they had just walked. LP thought, this could be good or bad. Are they Herbertson's cohorts or just blokes out to climb the mountain? Paranoia was starting to set in. He needed to act fast. "Hey guys, are you planning on climbing to the peak?" LP asked cautiously. The answer was what he wanted to hear. All 3 answered yes. "Can you do me a favour? Take this book to the peak and leave it there," asked LP. They looked puzzled as they watched on, as LP explained why he was doing what he was doing as Nikki filmed. He then handed the book to one of them, entrusting its contents to reach the peak before sunset on the 23rd January 2016. LP and Nikki walked back the way they came, with LP hoping what he had put in play would make a difference in a world he saw spinning out of control. In eyesight of his vehicle, he heard Ingrid shout out, "Hurry up! About time, we've got a birthday party to attend and help prepare some party food for the kids. Are you satisfied now? I don't want to hear any more about the mountain." "Not quite satisfied. You well know. I have a second surprise. Me and Nikki are going to fly over the peak of Mount Biawar on sunset. Happy birthday for the 23rd. "What's Dad on about?" Nikki asked. "I'll let him explain." "I've booked a flight for both of us in a 1938 Waco open-air cockpit biplane. This is your birthday present for March. We'll fly over the peak of Mount Biawar on sunset after your niece's birthday party, weather permitting. What do you think?" LP said with a confident smile. "I'm up for it," Nikki replied with a wide grin. Everything was starting to fall into place, and it looked like he and his mates wouldn't need to climb to the peak after all. LP hoped this would be enough, by just leaving someone else to take his book up the mountain, and when opened, reveal what was handwritten in the book for all to know, and get some publicity for his book. LP placed his backpack back on the back seat, leaving the rear left door open for Nikki to get in. He was back behind the wheel and heading home, happy that his first part of his mission was completed. Later, if the pilot gives the okay, Nikki and LP would be flying over Mount Biawar at sunset. Mission accomplished, so he thought. LP was starting to get impatient. As much as he wanted to be there for his granddaughter, his thoughts were fixated on flying over Mount Biawar on sunset. Time was running out. It was nearly 4:30 in the Arvo, with thunderstorm heads brewing in the north and southwest. Bomb weather radar on his phone confirmed storms approaching from the west, and it looked unlikely they would clear for takeoff from Caloundra airstrip. Luck would be on their side. The weather gods shone on them as they stood on the tarmac with their pilot, as they looked for clear sky over the Glasshouse Mountains. No radar or weather report would dictate a decision by the pilot. It was his call, based upon the weather conditions as he saw it at that time. LP and the pilot remained on the tarmac, waiting until the sun broke through storm clouds on the horizon, while Ingrid and Nikki exchanged small talk just inside the hangar. Time ticked over ever so slowly before bright sunlight broke through menacing storm clouds. 45 minutes seemed like an eternity before Rodney, their pilot, shouted out, "Right, we're good to go." He instructed his passengers to climb up and squeeze into the front cockpit with just enough room for 2 people. He then followed and positioned himself in the rear cockpit and would fly the plane from there. Instruments in front of LP and Nicky had been disengaged, but the pilot still warned not to touch anything in front of them or he could lose control of the plane. Rodney waved over his mechanic to give the propeller one big heave down to crank over the engine, which sounded like a car backfiring as it roared. Moments later, they were in the air heading a straight course to Mount Biwa. The storm clouds had now dissipated somewhat, and within 5 minutes they were flying around the mountain and over it as the sun sunk below the distant horizon. LP got what he wanted, an incredible sunset full of colour, and Nicky was really excited at witnessing a spectacular display of nature, as thunder and lightning strikes could be seen to the south and north as Rodney turned the plane around, pointing it in the direction of Caloundra airstrip. LP continued to snap photos by holding his camera in reverse and hoped he'd capture the amazing colours of sunset and engulfing storm. There was no room to turn around in the front cockpit. It was just guesswork if he'd capture anything worthwhile for posting on Twitter or Facebook. After looking at one photo as the plane was about land, it looked like they were not alone at that moment in time. Landing with a smooth touchdown and taxiing down the runway brought their day to a magic ending. Nicky was over the moon, a full moon at that, with what she had experienced, and LP was thankful everything ended almost to plan. They thanked Rodney for a great flight, and he replied, "I should be thanking you. I've never seen a more spectacular sunset ever in all the time I've been flying over the Glasshouse Mountains. Email me a couple of photos. I'd love to add them to my Facebook page." Chapter 39. The Mountain Calls. 6 months passed, and nothing was reported about finding LP's book on the peak of Mount Biwa with the message enclosed. Something must have gone astray. Did the guys entrusted with LP's mission fail to leave his book at the peak? Did they turn back and keep the book, or maybe it was thrown from the mountain? The other possibility, 2 giant eagles soared above the mountain every day, and something shiny might attract them, and maybe it's in their nest. LP decided on a new time to climb the mountain to see if he could find out what happened to his book. He contacted all his mates and told them the new date, 23rd, January 2017. "Lock it in," he said to them all. The new plan had finally come together, and he would find out if the young blokes had delivered his book back in 2016 and left it on the peak to be found. LP's mates all met on Sunday at Bear's old beach house the day before the climb. Not so old since the renovation started. All knew how to get there, with a short drive along the beach to the small township at Tiwa. LP greeted Bear, first with a firm handshake and a hug, next Brownie, Cato and Mason. Together, they would end what was started all those years ago at the Bora Ring in outback Queensland. Bear did some reminiscing and said, "Love this old place. It's full of stories." "Yeah, like the time we had that confrontation with Nutter and his mad bikie mates," Mason said. Bear answered, pointing at the doorway. "I thought we weren't going to make it out alive as I summed up the situation that day. From what I could see, they outnumbered us 10-1. But mate, you were fearless confronting Nutter," LP responded. "I had Nutter bluffed and put on a pretty impressive front. That just gave us enough time to get out of there and catch up with Brownie waiting in the back street before the house exploded." "Better late than never," Brownie said with a bit of a chuckle. "And you did a pretty good job on the reno. Pity Red's not here. He'd like hearing that story again, and seeing what you did to the old place since last here," LP said. Bear answered, in a soft voice. "I still feel responsible for losing Red down the rapids at Big River. I got the gold nugget, but it wasn't worth it in the end. I shouldn't have got him involved. If I hadn't picked him up in Melbourne and taken him on a gold hunt, he'd be still alive today. Don't be too hard on yourself. Red was a risk taker. If it wasn't then, it would have been somewhere else," LP said. "Yeah, you're probably right. Now what's the plan?" Bear asked. LP went through his idea on how to proceed, but wanted input on making sure all would make it to the peak. If everything works out, he figured, they'll make the news big time. "LP, You should be more upfront with us. Is that all you want to do? Asked Brownie. He knew that there was no way of stopping LP from going ahead with whatever he was on about, so he figured he'd better tag along and keep a watchful eye out at his ancestral home. No, there's more, but not to worry, I'll handle it. LP said to everyone. This is not an easy climb at our age. In our younger days, not a problem, but now we'll be pushing it, Bear said. Mason had something to add. You've seen the news reports lately, and just about every second week someone's taken off the mountain by state emergency rescue guys. Cato spoke up while sitting on the lounge room couch. I've climbed it when the mountain was closed after the rock falls. It's easier now, but still dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. LP, if you want to be on the peak by sunset on the 23rd, we'll need to allow an hour for the ascent and 15 minutes to get back down. That doesn't add up, Mason pointed out. LP ignored his question and nodded in agreement. Then speaking to everyone, firstly, I'll point out how it's going to go down, or should I say, go up. When we reach the peak, we'll find my book. Second, we upload the evidence of Herbertson shooting George to social media. Third, upload the scroll and mantra too. Finally, explain what was handwritten on the inside front cover of the book, then capture a sunset photo. Simple as. LP had been taking sunset photographs across Pumice Passage from Bullcock Beach, looking to the Glasshouse Mountains for the past 7 years. His patience would pay off one day, on the 23rd January, and snap the perfect sunset photo as the sun set on the peak of Mount Biwa. But this time, he'd be standing on the peak on the 23rd. A sunset at 6:42 p.m, and allowing for 15 minutes as the colours of sunset change would still give them time to descend with enough light. Cato spoke next to answer Mason's question. I agree, I've timed it. It's possible to get down the mountain in 15 minutes, but we'll need extra time to do all the things you said, LP. We'll need to leave 15 minutes earlier. Delaying descent after sunset is pushing it. It will be dark as we walk back the last 700 metres, so we'll take small LED torches, the latest innovation in lighting. At the hardest part of the descent will be made easy, as LP pointed out, by wearing denim shorts, and we'll need to be on our bums sliding down, digging in our climbing boots on rock to stop us from falling. It's almost impossible to stand and descend after passing through the limestone cave, and without light, too dangerous. Bear scratched his head, looked over at LP and said, What book? What's it doing on the peak? I don't want to go into it now. All will be revealed soon enough, LP replied. Okay, but I don't think I've got the right gear for climbing. Bear didn't have proper climbing boots, nor denim shorts. LP wanted to reassure everyone. Clothing and footwear wasn't a problem. Just cut the legs of your jeans and runners are okay for climbing. The next day, Monday the 23rd, they all bundled into LP's 4x off-road vehicle, leaving Tiwa Beach behind. After driving south, he turned off the Bruce Highway, passing Brownie's mob's Bora Ring, then onto a dirt road flanked by a large pine plantation, while macadamia trees lined the opposite side of the road. Brownie, Bear, Cato and Mason were silent. LP could sense that his mates doubted why they needed to climb Mount Biwa. He hoped they wouldn't back out on what was agreed, even though they all had their health issues, could give them good reason not to go with LP. LP broke suddenly, stirring up a dust storm. In front of LP's Navara was another sign, this time depicting what you can and can't do when climbing Mount Biwa. Nothing had changed since he was last there with Nikki. The mountain was still open for climbing, and being a weekday, few other people would climb, especially in the late afternoon. Bear was first to break the silence. Are you sure this is a good idea? Look at the photo, that's no rockfall. It's boulders tumbling down where you want us to go? LP responded, Yep, we've been through worse shit before. Remember back when we lost George, and the rockfall back then. That's past. We're here. It's safer. The mountain is open for climbing. Brownie had a question on his mind. Hey bro, do we worry about Herbertson anymore? After what happened at New Year, what if he's gotten wind of what we're up to today? Forget about him. It's been over 7 years since he wanted to kill us. If he thought he could, he would have done it long ago. I've got the evidence of him shooting George. Today is his day of reckoning. I've got it on a memory stick with me now, plus the video on my phone. to upload later. That's our insurance, our get out of jail free and his ticket to jail, LP replied with confidence. Cato, standing at the side of the tray back, reached down for what they needed for the climb. 5 bottles of water, 10 metres of climbing, rope and shackles. All had their smartphones, climbing boots or runners, and wearing denim shorts as LP requested. They were prepared for the climb. Before LP locked the Navara, he grabbed his small backpack. It just had room for his iPhone book, a copy of the scroll, shrink-wrapped, and squeezed his water bottle in, then gave the key to Brownie for safekeeping. As they walked towards a narrow pathway, Brownie called out, "Stop!" He placed his hand on the trunk of a gum tree and asked permission to enter to appease the ancestral spirits of the mountain, even though he felt he shouldn't be there. Okay, let's keep going. Sunlight filtered through the forest canopy, and after 300 paces brought them to a clearing with a table, chairs and barbecue covered by an awning. From there, they could see the peak, as low white cloud slowly drifted across. As well, 2 eagles soared above the summit. It reminded LP of the great eagle in the rock face of the Grand Canyon, which kept a watchful eye on the first peoples of the Americas. He hoped this was a good omen. "Let's push on," said LP, while pointing to another track leading into more dense forest. This part of the climb he knew well. The incline was starting to get steeper, and LP could hear heavy breathing behind him. It was already becoming a struggle for some of them. LP raised his hand and said, "We'll stop for a few minutes and catch our breath." The guys looked relieved, crouching down, catching their breath and lowering their heart rate. "Okay, take a few deep breaths, not much further to the next clearing, and then we can take another break." "Let's go," LP commanded. Now they were within sight of their quest, as clear water trickled down the last 40 stone steps. They could see the next clearing as they looked up at sheer rock, their next obstacle to assail. Cato's knowledge would come in handy now. He'd climbed this part of the mountain many times before. LP said to Cato, "You lead, you know the way best." Leaning forward with the climbing rope over his right shoulder, Cato leads the way up. No need for rope yet. If needed, it would be on the descent. Cato was now inside of the cave opening, and turned his head to those behind him and said, "Not much further, guys, to the limestone cave. It's just ahead. When we enter, we'll rest again." Cato was really pushing himself. He knew he couldn't make it to the summit. He was going to keep the rope with him at the cave. The entrance would be as far as he's going. He questioned why he was doing this at all, but he knew mateship. He would wait until they came down and help with the rope if need be. They entered the cave, all looking up, seeing creamy stalactites hanging from the cave ceiling like daggers. It gave them all an eerie feeling as they looked around the walls, depicted in Aboriginal drawings from Brownie's ancestors. Brownie was not only feeling the strain of the climb, he was spooked. He knew he shouldn't be there. It's a sacred site for his mob. And he now knew he should have taken heed of the warning from the custodians of this place. The sign also read in front of where LP pulled up, "In respect to the elders and folklore of the mountains, please do not climb." Brownie called out to LP, "Sorry mate, I can't go any further, or bad shit is going to happen. We'll end up like Tibragargan, stone dead." "Bullshit. You're taking Dreamtime to far, but it's your call. If anyone else wants to turn back, go with Brownie," LP answered. Bear, who was tough as old boots, but was feeling the pain. This climb had challenged what he thought he was capable of. In the old days, he was fearless, but aged as weary him. What he thinks he can do, his body is no longer up to it. He will turn back as well. That left Mason to have his say. LP looked at him and asked, "What's your excuse for not following me?" "Don't second guess me. I've followed you this far. We all have. And I'll follow you to the peak. I'm not exhausted. I feel great. I've been working out in the gym with the old folk after work. They're a real inspiration." "That's good, but if you change your mind, I have a selfie stick for a live feed on my phone. I can do this alone if I have to." "Now, I'll be quick. Sunset is approaching. What I have to reveal is about immortality." LP replied. Bear butted in. "Are you okay?" "Sounds a bit over the top." "Let me finish," LP shouted. "At times I'd have to agree, but hear me out." He then continued, in a soft, calm voice, "You know what we've all been through in saving the scroll. They all nodded in silence. You all have seen the image within the scroll. Again, they nodded. And we all know about the mantra relating to the scroll. Again, they nodded. Well, I've looked into the centre of the scroll revealing the facial image and whispered the mantra daily since returning from the Tiwa beach houses. After what happened back on New Year's Eve, said LP. Bear blurted out. Yeah, shit happens. Herbertson and his cohorts are still out to get us. Stay with me on this. I have something important to repeat. Before whispering the mantra one morning. May the healing spirit of God, through the enlightened one, rest upon you and all who you come in contact with in peace. LP continued. I had a feeling of dread and of my mortality and a feeling of nothingness. Then there was a flash of intense white light that saturated my whole body as I started to whisper the mantra. At that moment, I connected with my immortality. Not this mortal life, but the knowing, the part of God, my soul, will go back to God. My death is just a passing, for I have attained enlightenment. If not for Brownie's spiritual connection with the mountain, I wouldn't have believed it possible. That's a big call. I'm with you on that one. My Masonic brethren yearn for glorious immortality too, Mason said. LP had something else to add. Remember George's revelation about the mantra? I've noticed it has 23 letters first, then 23 words in total. And when does the sun set on the peak of Mount Biwa? 23rd of January. Okay, another coincidence with numbers. We'll talk about that later. What actually are you going to do when you reach the summit? Is it about Herbertson? Bear asked. Yes and no. In my shirt pocket is the memory stick. It's not just insurance, it's payback time for Herbertson. I have a plan to live, feed it to social media, then deliver a message for all the world to hear and see. Mason, we're running out of time. We'll push on to the summit. It's only a half hour before sunset, LP said. He instructed the guys to head back down, but they would defy him, including Brownie, who may well bring the wrath of the mountain upon them all, if he didn't appease the dreamtime spirits of his ancestors. Leave this sacred place now, LP, and Mason started walking deeper into the cave, exiting through a large crevice to a tall stand of forest on the mountainside. They traversed up along to the edge of the cliff face, with just enough solid rock to get a foothold. Kodo's rope would come in handy now, but there's no turning back, LP thought. Looking ahead, LP pointed to another worn track leading further up and twisting around to who knows what. What confronted them was the edge of another challenging rock face. Looking up from that vantage point, they could see the summit only a short distance away. LP struggled to concentrate on his footing. One wrong step would send him over the edge, if he didn't blank out thoughts of what he was up to when he reached the summit. Mason shouted out, "Face the rock. Don't look out, just look at your feet and grip the rock face and move one foot and one hand at a time." With the summit in sight, it wasn't long before they stood looking out over a panoramic view of the coast and mountains, with the setting sun soon to drop behind the mountain range in the distance. Now, LP had little time to waste. He reached into his small backpack, moved his bottled water aside, and pulled out his iPhone and his book. Mason looked at what LP was doing and asked, "What's first on our do list?" LP replied, "I plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." Mason replied, "Look above. I think you might need more than 1 stone. Those eagles soaring above look like trouble, if you ask me. What I mean is, I'm going to reveal the message handwritten on the inside cover of my book. It should have been revealed by now by the guys I entrusted my book to. Can you see anything up here that looks like this book cover?" Mason looked around and sighted nothing at first. Then he spotted something over in a crevice at the edge of the peak. Mason took a couple of paces to the edge of the mountain and pushed his hand down and grabbed it with his thumb and forefinger and pulled it out carefully, handing it to LP. It was LP's book he gave to the young blokes. It was still shrink-wrapped, and LP wanted to write something else inside the book cover, but time was against him. "Well, let's get on with it. Hand me your phone and stand side on to the sun. It's just dropping behind clouds on the horizon," Mason said, with an anxious tone in his voice. "Are you expecting a call?" Mason looked at who was trying to contact them. It was Bear. "What's up? Are you off the mountain yet?" Mason asked. "Shut up," he yelled. "Listen, Herbertson's just past the cave. He's on his way up with help. Can't you hear it? Mason pressed end. Bloody hell, it's Herbertson. Hear that noise. He'll be here in a sec. Start talking. I've got a live feed now. I doubt if he's here to rescue us. LP raised his right hand with his shrink-wrap book in hand, standing straight as the sun was setting on the 23rd, and said, "Take more notice of." And with his left finger, he made the sign of V+1 and continued to say, "And in my name," LP paused. "While I have your attention, I'll add, protect children nor exploit their labour. Don't own slaves nor be a slave to money. Desert people, release your slaves, now." "Is that it?" Mason asked, as swirling rotor blades woofed above. LP stood silent as though in a trance, then shook his head, looked up and spotted Herbertson holding a handgun aimed at him from the helicopter side opening. Panic set in. He steeled his thoughts. "They always shoot the messenger." In defiance, he yelled out, "Give it your best shot, dickhead." Not that Herbertson could hear him. Well, Brownie was right. LP should have taken more notice of his warning, but too late now. Eyeballing Herbertson. LP stretched out his right arm with his book in hand as Herbertson took aim. At that moment, the sun reflected off the shrink wrap like a laser beam, blinding the pilot momentarily, losing control. As Herbertson squeezed the trigger, a bullet just missed LP's head. There was no escape. Once the pilot regained control. But like the eagle legend from the Navajo people of the Grand Canyon, so too, two giant eagles gave a watchful eye over their domain, Mount Biwa. This other big bird, blades swirling with deafening noise, needed to be taken down. LP could see what the pilot couldn't. Two eagles soaring on a thermal current with wingspans of almost 2 meters, about to attack anything that invaded their territory. Like fighter pilots, they zeroed in on the enemy, attacking Herbertson, and started pecking his head apart before he fell from the chopper at LP's feet. LP placed his foot on his body and said to Mason, "Send the feed about Herbertson to my YouTube channel, then I've got something more to say." "Okay, sent, I'm ready. What next?" Mason asked. "Hand me my phone. Thanks. Done. I've sent the photo on Instagram of sunset." LP changed back to Twitter to send the final message to his followers. "The end is the beginning. Life renewed." Download the scroll, whisper the mantra, and connect with "What I see, you will see. What I know, you will know." LP closed his phone case and said, "I think that's enough for today. Let's get on the move before anything else drops from the sky. I'm leaving the book where you found it after writing what was revealed today about V+1. As well, I'm leaving a copy of the scroll. Mason, you know what's meant about the Roman numerals?" "Well, fill me in. I'm not a sign reader," Mason said with an inquisitive look on his face. "It's the 5th commandment in the New Testament and the 6th in the Old one, thou shalt not kill. Depends which book you're reading, both are correct. Let's get off this mountain. You go first. I'll follow, just in case Herbertson's copper mates are waiting back at the car park for me. Otherwise, they're liable to arrest us all." "Okay, but when are you coming down?" Grinning, LP replied, "Don't worry about that. I have a plan." Mason backtracked down the mountain while a drone approached. LP reaches up and grabs his delivery, straps on the wingsuit, and takes a running leap off Mount Biwa. By the time Mason caught up with Bear and his mates, LP flashed past with giant eagles acting as wingmen. The weather was not improving, as lightning and rain intensified on the horizon as the updraft glided LP and the eagles to Wild Horse Mountain, 123 meters above sea level. After releasing his chute, he pulled back on the cords and landed opposite the stairs leading up to the tower. To the right, the eagles landed, perching themselves high on a tree branch. After stepping out of his wingsuit, LP walked up the stairs as darkness engulfed the tower from the approaching storm, rattling it. The next flash of light sees only the person wearing a dry as a bone waistcoat and hood. His hands are on the central platform as lightning so bright looked like a blank white canvas strikes the tower aerial. One moment he's there. Next, he's gone as the eagles take flight to Mount Biwa. Past, present, future are one.